Douluo, the master of the nuclear soul. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Third Soul Skill, Energy Absorption Aura. Clang. In the dense forest, two figures crossed each other in a breath. A foul smell of blood gradually came from one figure. In the blink of an eye, the huge body broke into two pieces, and a large amount of black and red blood gushed out like a fountain. Under pressure, it rose to more than 5 meters high. Uchiha Uranium slowly put away his knife, turned his head with a serious face, and looked at the soul beast that was rotten all over and exposed pale flesh and blood. His brows were furrowed, and his eyes flashed with thoughts. I don't know what he was thinking. After a moment, he sighed faintly, walked forward, and pressed his hand to the corpse full of radiation. The soul power in his body was activated, and the white light covered his skin, with a different kind of beauty. Under his feet, 3 halos emitting faint light rose one after another, 1 yellow and 2 purple. As the soul rings circulated, the surging soul power and the fissioned uranium elements intersected to form a wave-like force that constantly affected the nearby world. The third deep purple halo flashed instantly, and the air around Uchiha Uranium's body became distorted. The invisible enriched energy around him began to flow into his body, and then was absorbed by the nuclear cells that were constantly undergoing energy reactions. A feeling of fullness filled his body, and the soul power that had been consumed by half gradually returned to perfect state. And it was not just the energy around him. There was also dense radiation energy wrapped around the soul beast's body. Although it was far less than the energy fluctuations on Uchiha Uranium's body, in the eyes of the elemental pupil, the black radiation energy kept moving, spreading steadily and orderly around, intending to infect everything around. It was visible to the naked eye that with the death of the soul beast, the surrounding land and trees were covered with a layer of light gray. And this gray was still spreading to the distance. If no one dealt with it, then this place where the soul beast died would become a real-life restricted area. Uchiha Uranium remained silent. Under the guidance of the third soul skill, the radiation energy that had accumulated in the soul beast's body or outside began to move towards him, and as time passed, the speed of the return flow became faster and faster, until it touched his palm and was instantly absorbed. He was devouring these radiation energies. It can also be called assimilation, incorporation. Soon, all the energy in the body of this radiation monster was devoured, and the power that this soul beast had cultivated with great effort, mixed with nuclear energy, also entered Uchiha Uranium's body and turned into a ball. If Uchiha Uranium could take time, he could digest this soul power and completely transform it into his own power. This is similar to taking elixirs. The only difference is that elixirs have drug resistance, while soul beasts do not. In fact, the more powerful the soul beast, the more tonic it is for Uchiha Uranium. But it is only limited to radiation soul beasts, and the radiation energy is completely intertwined with the power in the soul beast. Otherwise, his third soul skill can only guarantee the absorption of various energies contained in it, instead of swallowing up the power together. After Uchiha Uranium finished absorbing, he slowly raised his head. The rotating magatama slowly retracted into black pupils. There was no emotion in his calm eyes. His handsome face had a bit of resolute momentum, but his complexion was a little dark, as if it was caused by years of malnutrition. His somewhat boring silver-white long hair was roughly tied up with a straw rope, like a ponytail, revealing his smooth forehead. At the age of 13, he had unknowingly grown to about 1.75 meters tall. He looked young, but his once childish face and temperament had now turned into volcano-like silence that was hidden and shocked when it moved. Living in the forest every day gave him a strong physique. Although he did not look strong on the surface, his clothes, which were washed white, were covered with explosive muscles. It had been 4 years since Uchiha Uranium received a warning from the Titan ape. During these 4 years, Uchiha Uranium had lived a very fulfilling 4 years. During the day, he practiced swordsmanship, physical skills, and throwing, and fought with the radioactive monsters that kept appearing around him. At night, he practiced soul power until dawn, or killed the monsters that suddenly attacked him. This cycle repeats over and over again, squeezing his schedule and time to the limit, just to improve his soul power faster and faster. 2,000 years, 100 years, 3 soul rings represent that Uchiha Uranium's level is at least over 30, that is, he is a soul master, and a fighting soul master with his original martial soul, the Sharingan mutation, the radiation eye. But it's not just that simple. The third soul ring that Uchiha Uranium obtained came from the 10,000-year soul beast, the night demon bat, which he had fought before. But he was also a lucky guy. The night demon bat, which originally had a 10,000-year cultivation, almost died after tasting Uchiha Uranium's blood. Although he was lucky enough not to die, his soul power cultivation also plummeted, and only 1,000 years were left. 10,000 years does not mean that you have lived for 10,000 years. Soul beasts can also improve their abilities through hard training. Fortunately, it has 10,000 years and can use its training to exchange for life. If it were an ordinary soul beast, its corpse would have stank long ago. Uchiha Uranium encountered this night demon bat again by chance and defeated it, absorbing the soul ring that was once 19,000 years old but now about 7,000 years old. Perhaps because the soul beast is full of nuclear energy, it is like a traitor opening the door and leading the way for him. Absorbing the soul ring that is far beyond the age limit is smoother than he thought, and because of the nuclear energy factor, he awakened the soul skills related to absorption. The third soul skill, energy absorption aura. The predecessor of this soul skill is probably the skill of large-scale life absorption of the night demon bat. After being transformed with his radiation eye martial spirit, life is converted into elements that are free everywhere around, ownerless soul power, or various scattered soul powers. For example, radiation energy, such as the high temperature and heat caused by the energy-like soul power of Phoenix Fireline, but he has never tried to directly receive the soul skill, nor has he had the opportunity. Once this soul skill is used, a continuous halo will form around the body, which will last for an hour, passively attracting all the ownerless energy within a radius of 50 meters around, and the soul power scattered everywhere will flow into his body, and then be decomposed by nuclear cells and transformed into usable soul power. The active effect is to strengthen this attraction level, no longer a simple attraction, but to directly absorb with a stronger domineering force. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. This is the same as the behavior of the night demon bat, absorbing the life essence of the soul beast and increasing its age. This reminds Uchiha Uranium of the ability of the Samsara Eye in Naruto, which also appeared in the final decisive battle, Sasuke's chakra absorption. It's just that it is stronger and more brutal. The absorbed soul power is only temporarily available, but if the absorbed soul power has been entangled with the radiation energy, once absorbed into the body, it will be permanent and your own power. With his soul skill, he soon absorbed nuclear energy from everything around him to speed up his cultivation, such as the radiation traps he set up, things he had touched before, and the radioactive soul beast corpse in front of him. The reason is simple. The soul power absorbed and attracted can replenish your soul power consumption, but it cannot make you stronger. And the soul power with nuclear energy and radiation energy, as long as it is digested, can increase the soul power limit, that is, increase the soul power level. This is the fundamental reason why he can reach the 39th level of soul power at the age of 13. In fact, the soul power improvement is not really fast. Tang San's improvement speed is not even bothering to upgrade one level at a time, and he directly upgrades 5 levels at a time. You all know it. Even in the Soul Master competition, Tang San, who is level 43, used the fusion skill with the Shrek 7 Devils to directly reach the 70th level of soul power to open the martial soul true body. This will make me fight with my head in the future. Chapter 52 True Power. It's scary to say it. Judging from Uchiha Uranium's current situation, he's a well-deserved genius. He is level 39 at the age of 13. It can be said that there is no such fast improvement speed in the history of Soul Masters, and all this comes from a third purple soul ring. This kind of soul skill that can permanently improve soul power is not like the effect that a purple soul ring can achieve at all. Even if it is replaced with a 10,000-year soul skill, it may barely be qualified. However, the soul beast that produced this soul ring is itself a 10,000-year soul beast. It's just because of the radiation that the age has decreased, so it can be absorbed by Uchiha Uranium. Otherwise, if it is simply absorbed normally, a genius soul master needs the strength of a 50-level soul king to absorb it, and a normal soul master needs the strength of a 60-level soul emperor to be able to absorb this big guy that is close to 20,000 years old. And with such a high level of soul power, the soul skill obtained is just an improvement to increase the speed of cultivation and a certain degree of soul power absorption. At the threshold of level 60, where high-level and must-kill soul skills are everywhere, you have one less level 60 lethal soul skill than others out of thin air, which is too deadly. But it is not without disadvantages. After all, he only got a purple soul ring. If it were a soul emperor, completely absorbing this soul ring that is nearly 20,000 years old, but actually more than 10,000 years old, it would probably be just a simple absorption of soul power to a certain extent, and it is very likely to be a soul power absorption similar to a killer, stealing the soul power of the opponent to feed back to oneself. However, the situation of soul beasts reducing their age is extremely rare. For example, a powerful soul beast of 100,000 years old sacrifices and actively transforms its age into soul ring power. Otherwise, no matter how seriously injured the soul beast is, there will be no reduction in age. In the final analysis, radiation itself is not comparable to soul skills. The killing that soul skills can do, radiation can do, and what soul skills cannot do, radiation can also do. Radiation can continuously consume the life source of soul beasts in all directions, forcing soul beasts to rely on reducing their age to fight. If Uchiha Uranium met the Night Demon Bat a year or two later, I am afraid that he would only see a Night Demon Bat of 1,000 years old. Radiation can kill, there is no doubt about it. As his soul power increased, Uchiha Uranium could also feel that he was becoming more and more familiar with the control of his abilities. After obtaining the second soul ring at level 20, he could sense the specific range of his radiation and whether there was any existence that broke into his radiation range. This was the initial ability to sense himself. Now, at level 30, he can use the elemental pupil to see the radiation energy, and even take the radiation back into his body, or pour it out of his body to achieve a short-term control effect. But it was useless. He continued to emit radiation energy without any change. This level of control was not enough to fully master it, but judging from the current situation, the time is not far from complete mastery. This is the number one today? Damn it, you came to die after smelling my radiation, and you don't even look at what you are in front of me. Looking at the unknown soul beast lying at his feet, Uchiha Uranium kicked the head at his feet casually, wiped the knife in his hand with a piece of leather, and then threw it aside, turning around and leaving the battlefield, leaving only a pile of dirty blood. But the amazing thing is that the gray air around him had dissipated into the forest at some point, and the polluted radiation energy was also absorbed, no longer having the momentum that once destroyed all living things. Uchiha Uranium has never forgotten that he is not the destroyer of the world, he is just a passerby who avoids himself. If it is not necessary, he will not take the initiative to attack the surrounding environment. Just like the food chain, he is at the top, but if he destroys the bottom, then this pyramid-like class will gradually go to extinction, and he will not be spared in the end. However, Uchiha Uranium, who was walking away, did not notice that after he turned around and left, the corpse of the radioactive monster gradually began to shrivel. From the cross-section of the huge head, it can be seen that the blood inside is no longer lost, leaving only dry flesh and blood inside the corpse. And the veins and textures of the blood-red flower on his waist became clearer, as if it had life, and it kept flashing a faint light with every breath. This soul beast is probably 1,000 years old, right? Its aura is a bit mixed. It must have eaten a lot of radioactive soul beasts. Humph, even that monster couldn't do anything to me, and this kind of stuff actually came to trouble me. Uchiha Uranium sneered, his eyes flickered. For him, this kind of soul beast carrying radiation is a natural delicacy. Once the energy absorption aura is turned on, every feeding back can bring him a boost in soul power. If it weren't for the need to regularly consolidate soul power and turn it into his own use, otherwise, just these soul beasts that came to him by smelling the smell would have made him reach the soul master realm long ago. But eating too much of this kind of tonic can easily weaken the foundation, even if this kind of power mixed with radiation has the same origin as him and it is effortless to absorb it. This is not something he cultivated bit by bit, but something he robbed. The reason why it is called a monster instead of a soul beast is because the guy living in the lake in the forest has nothing to do with the soul beast race. This story started a year ago. Uchiha Uranium still remembers that it was a sunny noon. As the energy level of radiation became stronger and stronger, some soul beasts infected by the primary radiation gradually appeared around him. After absorbing the energy and converting it into his own power, he realized that the things contained in these soul beasts could effectively help him improve his cultivation speed. After figuring this out, Uchiha Uranium began to move and find a way to return to the forest lake where he had stayed before. He had lived there for 3 whole years. That place had become a hell on earth, but not for him. As long as he absorbed the radiation he had once received, then naturally, the forest lake would return to its original state, and his own cultivation would also be greatly improved. But unfortunately, after wandering in the forest for more than half a year, he had not found the way back, until one day, he saw a monster that had killed all the other radiation soul beasts. At that time, they just looked at each other, and the ape soul beast gave up the garbage and turned his head to focus his fiery eyes on himself. Obviously, it was hungry, and it was not picky about food. The latest novel is published on 69shu.com. There is no doubt that after realizing that he was no match for the opponent, Uchiha Uranium fled instantly. At that time, he only had a soul power of level 33, while the soul beast in front of him was 12 meters tall, and it was a 10,000-year level. Moreover, its whole body was highly rotten, but there was no sign of sudden death. This shows that although the radiation killed its mind, its body became more terrifying and more tenacious. It used to be a titan ape of the 100-year level, and it was of the same race as the king of the forest, but now it is a monster that is bloodthirsty and kills and attempts to devour Uchiha Uranium. But they were too close, and this distance was fleeting. As a last resort, Uchiha Uranium could only turn around and face this monster. The battle began. There are 2 more chapters, it may take some time. Is there anyone who votes? If no one, I will ask again later. Dear friends, please click on the collection. Chapter 53, Battle Beyond Death. As soon as it got close, the monster of the Titan ape race struck with a heavy hammer. Uchiha Uranium retreated quickly without hesitation, tapping the ground with his footsteps, dodging the monster's attack at the last second. At the same time, the radiation eye martial spirit in his eyes rotated rapidly, and the elemental pupil quietly opened, observing the weakness of the monster in front of him. But he overlooked one point: the radiation monster cannot be inferred by common sense. Whoosh! A dark red whip shadow flashed by, and it was so fast that it left a faint afterimage in the air. It was not until it was about to hit Uchiha Uranium's face that a whistling roar was heard. But Uchiha Uranium's dynamic vision was so terrifying that when he noticed a sharp edge coming straight at him, he did not stay in place, but quickly rolled to avoid it, then exerted force on his toes, immediately flew into the air, and landed on the tree trunk, panting slightly, and cold sweat dripped out. So fast. At this time, he clearly saw what the slowly retracted dark red whip shadow was. It was a flesh whip, or tongue, that stretched out from the dense holes between the monster's ribs. Judging from the speed just now, if he was not careful and did not dodge, he would probably be beaten to pieces and lose his combat effectiveness for a short time. Even if he was not careful, he might be caught by the monster and torn to pieces immediately. Roar! The monster roared, and his eyes were full of thick black fog. There was no pupil or eyeball to be seen. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Just from the eyes of this monster, it was clear that it had no wisdom at all. The next moment, the monster suddenly rose up and rushed straight to where Uchiha Uranium was. The huge body brought an unparalleled sense of impact. Along with this sudden run, you can see that the 7 or 8 weak, short arms on its body suddenly flipped back, like pendants, without any effect. Tisk. Hard to fight. Wiping the cold sweat from his head, Uchiha Uranium's second and third soul rings began to move. With the activation of the extreme nuclear energy reaction and the energy absorption aura, his speed suddenly increased to a higher level. He avoided the monster that hit the tree and fell to the ground. Uchiha Uranium had several daggers in his hand at some point, and holding a knife in the other hand, he began to observe the monster. Originally, the fast-moving figure could still be captured, but at this moment, it was so fast that it became blurred. Ordinary people's vision could not keep up with his figure. But the monster can. It does not rely on its eyes to capture prey, it relies on perception. Swish! Several gray shadows flashed through the air in an instant, and there was not even a sound of an object tearing the air. In the blink of an eye, accompanied by the sound of a sharp blade entering the body, the monster suddenly roared, and the huge head suddenly turned its position, swaying around, staring at the constantly moving Uchiha Uranium, and the body began to emit gray-black mist, and the surrounding vegetation, which was originally fragile and rotten, collapsed in an instant. There is no doubt that it can sense the position of Uchiha Uranium. The daggers just now were all inserted into the holes on the waist of the monster. If he guessed correctly, there were probably some long tongues that needed to be vigilant. Once he entered a close battle, this kind of tongue that could rotate at will but was very sensitive would bring him a great threat. So the first goal was to get rid of these tongues first. He continued to move at a high speed and constantly shot daggers into the holes to limit the use of the tongues. He was at level 33 and had plenty of physical strength. Although he was far inferior to this monster that didn't know what fatigue was, he could still run for an hour. Not long after, all the daggers he carried were used up. The monster that couldn't catch up with him had no way to parry. He had practiced throwing to the peak. Even if he encountered Uchiha and used Kune, Shuriken, etc. to fight, he would not fall into the disadvantage. And it was even easier to deal with this kind of meat target-like existence. But for no reason, Uchiha Uranium suddenly felt uneasy. The next moment, Meng's eyes widened, and he suddenly stopped, turning back as if ignoring gravity. The sudden action made his blood boil, and his face turned pale. But a moment later, before he could stand firm, a chest-sized boulder whizzed past him. Gudong he swallowed his saliva, and for a moment, Uchiha Uranium's face suddenly became extremely ugly. If it weren't for his sixth sense, he would have turned into a ball of meat. He never thought that this clumsy monster would have such a fast reaction speed, or perception ability, to actually judge his position in the next second, and then throw the boulder brazenly. In an instant, the offense and defense reversed. If there is one, there will be two. It can catch his position. If he continues to rely on speed, once he makes a mistake, he may not have a second chance. The long-range method of killing is no longer useful, and now that the dagger has been used up, if he does not enter close combat, it will be more difficult to fight when it adapts to his speed. An idea flashed through Uchiha Uranium's mind, and after observing the current environment, he immediately made a decision. The first yellow soul ring moved, and a miniature, transparent radiation trap appeared in his hand. Without hesitation, after gathering enough soul power, he sprinkled it out continuously, with different forces and positions. The trap was no longer a threat to his speed, and he could use conventional tactics. And this high temperature and high heat spike trap, once it hits, is much more useful than the more than 70-centimeter blade in his hand. He is facing a 12-meter tall behemoth. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Huh? Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Uranium closed his eyes, and opened them again, revealing a hint of madness in his calm eyes. Roar. The next moment, when the monster rushed towards him, Uchiha Uranium raised his sword in his hand, moved his body instantly, and charged back at the monster. What does it feel like to have a mountain rushing towards him head-on? The breath that was like the shaking of the sky and the earth mixed with a disgusting smell set off a strong wind in front of it. Uchiha Uranium faced the behemoth, and his silver hair fluttered because of the changes in the surrounding airflow, but the look on his face was still so firm, without hesitation. When he chose to counterattack, he had already thrown the fear in his mind behind him. He would not be afraid, nor would he hesitate. He wanted to win. The 3 soul rings on his body kept flashing, withstanding the momentum of the giant beast. Boom! The sound of a strong air explosion sounded on the ground, and the black oil was immediately scattered under the heavy blow. The fist as big as a table suddenly slammed on the ground, with unparalleled power, hammering on the place where Uchiha Uranium originally stood. A moment later, the sharp-legged knife cut through the giant beast's ankle, cutting through the flesh and blood, and a large amount of black and red blood gushed out. A strong stench began to emanate from the surrounding battlefield. A thin figure quickly flashed under the giant beast's crotch, and while rolling, it cut another cut. This is the dwarf's lower body slash. I don't know why, I can't see the comments all of a sudden. I can't see the comments on the app, I can only see them in the author's background. I don't know what went wrong. Also, now I have to wait half an hour after publishing the chapter to see it on Kidian. Very confusing. Chapter 54. This is my escape route. Being too big is not a good thing. After the long tongue that was in the way could not be extended from the hole, Uchiha Uranium seemed to have turned into a blade dancer, dancing under the crotch of the giant beast. The sharp knife cut its flesh without any pressure. Black blood came out and spilled on the ground, making the surrounding environment more smelly. It seemed that this was an effective tactic, but Uchiha Uranium keenly discovered that with each cut, the flesh would be tougher than the previous one. Is this guy getting tougher and tougher? Without hesitation, the Eye of Elements opened. The next moment, Endless energy materialized into a physical entity, which was invisible in his eyes. As his sight turned, he saw that the gray radiation emitted from his body was actually absorbed by the giant beast. Fuck. You eat my radiation and become stronger. The horrifying reality almost scared Uchiha Uranium out of the blade dancer state. If this is really the case, then his chances of defeating this monster will become lower and lower over time, until he is finally caught and killed with one blow. This was too scary. He hadn't even gotten stronger yet, but this monster would become more and more terrifying as long as it stayed next to him. He followed his field of vision and saw more holes slowly forming. Suddenly, Uchiha Uranium dodged a stomping blow as if he was moving his nerves. Then he stepped hard on the ground with his toes and quickly jumped away from the giant's crotch. Sure enough, his ominous premonition was confirmed. A surge of gray-white soul power suddenly emanated from the giant, carrying a thick fishy wind and scattering away. Countless oil and fallen leaves burst out from the body. In an instant, a huge circular hole appeared around the giant. The giant slowly raised its right leg, which was oozing pus and blood. The gray-white soul power gradually disappeared from its leg. There was no doubt that if he hadn't dodged in time, the move that was similar to the war trampling would have almost killed him. It's so fucking hard to fight. Damn. The monster in front of him was so fleshy that his scalp was numb. He chopped it 17 times in a row, trying to cut off one of its legs first. As a result, after a series of crazy chops, even the bones were broken, but it could still stand steadily, and stomped on the ground, releasing such powerful trampling without any pain. The most important thing is that Uchiha Uranium looked around and saw that many of the cuts on the bloody place where he had just chopped the ground had closed without knowing when. His scalp was numb and he couldn't even speak. He couldn't think of how to deal with the monster in front of him. He didn't even have a large-scale lethal soul skill. What should he do? Swords are so inconvenient. Sure enough, it was too difficult to use this kind of knife to deal with a monster of this level. The monster hunter's sword was at least more than 3 meters long. What should he do? The monster didn't give him time to think. After a short pause, it set its sights on Uchiha Uranium again. Immediately, the boy could feel a strong malice lingering on his body. There was no malice in his eyes, nor anything else, only hunger, and he wanted to tear him into pieces and chew him up in his stomach. Gan, I really don't want to fight anymore, what a disgusting guy. The next moment, a fishy wind suddenly rose. A giant hand slapped down suddenly, but it did not hurt Uchiha Uranium. Although the giant beast could sense his actions, its speed could not keep up, which was the real reason why he could pedicure the giant beast at will. Ta-ta. Uchiha Uranium followed the arm and stepped directly on the arm of the giant beast. It was like an uneven road. The boy climbed up without difficulty, and with his footsteps, the boy rushed towards the head of the giant beast. He wanted to try and stab it into its head in one breath to see if it would die. Swish! The knife flashed, and a slow dark brown arm that tried to sneak attack him was instantly cut open, blood splashed, and fell to the ground. Whoosh! The dark red whip shadow flashed. When he reached the middle of the arm, he was interrupted by several tongues that suddenly attacked him. He was forced to quickly break away and gave up the plan of beheading. He moved instantly, and after a few breaths, he came to 50 steps away from the giant beast. He observed the giant beast calmly and began to think of a solution in his mind. Suddenly, a bold idea flashed through his mind. If it can absorb its own radiation, then can I absorb it back and absorb the radiation energy in its body directly? As time goes by, this monster will become more and more difficult to fight, and he must act immediately. Without hesitation, Uchiha Uranium's third soul ring flashed, and the active effect of the energy absorption aura was activated. The gray radiation energy that overflowed from the surroundings began to quickly gather in his body. He was not afraid that this radiation would hurt him. Just kidding, he is the source of radiation and the end of energy. As the active effect was activated, the giant beast seemed to have noticed something wrong, just like a fish swimming in the sea that temporarily left the water and jumped to the surface of the water. Discomfort appeared, but it didn't know what happened. But it didn't care. It only knew that heating the human with a tempting fragrance was the most important thing. Without stopping for a moment or roaring, the giant beast moved its huge body again, but this time it was no longer the same as before. Its tongue, like a living snake, flexibly turned around its waist and kept sticking out. If it gets close again, it might be very dangerous. An analysis of these tongues flashed through Uchiha Uranium's mind, and his impatient heart slowly calmed down. He knew that it was time to fight for life and death. The next moment, he moved and rushed towards the direction of the trap. After a breath, accompanied by a low roar, the giant beast also slightly bent its legs, and then suddenly exerted force, like a mountain pressing down on its head, with a momentum as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was cracking, and everything collapsed. Then, a tsunami-like pressure surged and fell from the sky. The latest novel is published on the 69th Book Forum. The boy paused, his breathing stopped, and even his heart twitched. In an instant, Uchiha Uranium's heart was alarmed. Run! Run! Moving his unconscious legs, the boy clenched his teeth and rushed forward at his fastest speed. The wind whistled in his ears, and he seemed to have broken through the speed limit he could bear. His face was hideous, his veins bulged, and the heavy death in his heart stimulated him. He had only one thought in his mind: run faster. A residual image flashed by. Boom. It seemed like just a blink of an eye, and it seemed like an era had passed. A giant figure, mixed with endless power, landed with a bang. The world shook, like a mountain falling. A huge amount of soil burst out, and a huge pit appeared in the center of the battlefield. The flat ground was directly shattered, as if the world was collapsing. A suffocating breath emanated from it, and dust and fallen leaves were raised up into the air, and then slowly fell down after a while. And there was no trace of Uchiha Uranium around. Roar! After not sensing the breath of Uchiha Uranium, the giant beast suddenly let out an angry and shrill roar, and the roar exploded, startling layers of sound waves, sweeping everything around. In the distance, Uchiha Uranium wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth because of breaking through the limit of his body. His face was red and looked like a devil. This is my escape route. Humph. The boy heard the roar, he smiled, regardless of the torture of his body, randomly found a direction, and left again in an instant. After a while, there was no trace. The update is over. Is there anyone who votes for me? Is there anyone who collects it for me? Is there anyone who invests in me? This is the 3 consecutive comments of the humble new author. I changed a lot of words in the last chapter. If there are readers who read it right after I posted it, you can wait until you exit and refresh the page before reading it again. You will have a different experience. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, The Female Lead Recruitment is about to end. Judging from the current progress, it will take about 10 to 20 chapters to decide who the heroine is. After this morning, the collection of heroines will end. Thank you for your active participation. There is still the last half day. Your participation will determine the future plot. I will judge how to determine it based on the messages sent by each real reader. What is a real reader? That is, readers who have voted for me, even if it is one. Readers who have commented on the chapters, even if it is one sentence, and have participated in the activity of collecting heroines. After all, many readers now come in to see what the book is, recruiting heroines, and just mention that they will collect all of them? Then they exit directly without even looking at it. For such readers, I will not consider asking for their opinions. After all, you are my friends. Because I can see all the messages in the author's backend, although there are many people who vote for recommendation and post chapter reviews, in order to ensure authenticity, I will still read them bit by bit. This is related to my future plot. Thank you for your participation in my book. It is you who make my life of writing books no longer monotonous, and I am very grateful. Thanks to the young man under the inspection badge, Dou's flood control, I really don't want to move, the fate of the ashes, the cousin who borrowed it, the book friend 20200324232426523, the wandering king, yes, I am the power of Dalaran, the frozen crystal, the friend 404, the ancestral golden spirit, not the first, Kusajoki, Kyankan sun and moon Linkong, and the night of heaven and earth for their rewards. And the book friend 20170617855383116's support of 10,000 rewards. Thank you all for accompanying me. I have experienced 110,000 words from the publication of the book to the present. I will not stop in the future and will continue to move forward. I have finished my inner words. Next, I will talk about the issue of adding more chapters. As you all know, This is the first time I have been recommended, so I will update 4 chapters a day to pay off all the previous debts, and the extra chapters are also considered extra. But this state of liver explosion cannot last long. Please understand that typing until 1:30 or 2 o'clock every day is a fatal blow to my hair. After this recommendation is over, I will return to the usual 2 updates per day. But if I am recommended again, I will change to 3 updates per day, and the extra updates will be accumulated. In other words, if the results are good, I will not care about my hair, and I will give you a burst of updates within 1 or 2 days. Although the new book period is a bit longer, it is particularly important for new books, but for me at the moment, your support gives me more motivation. I will just lay out the rules, and they will not change in the future. Normal update, 2 updates per day recommended, 3 updates per day 10,000 Kidian coins reward, 1 more chapter recommendation ticket extra update, 1 more chapter for every 1,000 recommendation tickets. From the current 2,967, let's call it 3,000, starting from 3,000, every 1,000 recommendation tickets will be added. Actually, this is very easy for you, and you can see the data. Monthly ticket extra update, 1 more chapter for every 50 monthly tickets other extra updates, 10 more chapters after the book is released. That's all for now. Thank you again for reading to the end. The latest novel offering chrysanthemums before Buddha will be first published on the 69 book bar. Chapter 56 Battle. That battle happened half a year ago. After he escaped successfully, he ran to a far place. Anyway, the forest was so big that as long as he didn't run deep, there would be no problem of survival. If an ordinary person encountered that monster and survived by chance, he would probably flee far away from the place where the monster existed and never approach it again. But Uchiha Uranium was different. He understood that this was the sin he had created. This was a monster spawned by radiation, and only he could solve it perfectly. If other people were to destroy this monster, it would be useless. The radiation would still not dissipate, and the super heavy radiation brought by the death of this monster would continue to give birth to the next one on this land, or even more things. Without soul beasts, plants would be spawned. Without plants, the land would be transformed into a dangerous place where ordinary people would die if they entered. Whether it was water, air, or even if the monster died, it was not the end, but a new beginning. Uchiha Uranium has the ability to absorb. Emotionally, this is a monster brought by his radiation. Logically, if he can absorb all of its radiation power, then the 40th level soul sect will not be a problem for him. Even after absorbing the heavily radiated land around him, the Soul King is just around the corner. The most important thing is its soul ring. Therefore, after reaching level 39, Uchiha Uranium went to the monster's residence. The 1,000-year-old radiation soul beast he just encountered was just a guy that evolved because of the energy around him because he was approaching the stone cave where he had been. This 1,000-year-old soul beast that mutated due to radiation could not appear near that monster or the lake in the forest. It would not let such delicious food appear around it. That's right, wherever he had been, a large area of radiation soul beasts had been catalyzed. Although this large area was as small as human hair to the Star Dou Great Forest, it was slowly dying. The bright sunshine was dotted, penetrating the layers of branches and leaves and sprinkled on the ground. A breeze blew from nowhere, sweeping the stench of the corpse, gradually going away, leaving only the faint smell of grass in the forest. Although it did not take away the surrounding corruption, this natural purification was seen by Uchiha Uranium. Is this nature? The boy caught a leaf that was slowly falling from the air. Looking at the green in front of him, but with a hint of gray veins, Uchiha Uranium fell into dead silence again. The next moment, he threw away the leaf that was dying and slowly moved towards his destination. Step by step, heavy and solid, the tragedy around him was caused by him. Every time he saw innocent soul beasts forced to mutate a second head and a third eye, constantly suffering from genetic mutations and DNA disorder, his heart would always twitch unconsciously. He didn't know why he felt this kind of heartache. Was it because he still had a kind heart? Or was it because the radiation came from him, but it was the soul beasts who took the blame? Or was it just hypocrisy to find excuses for himself because he wanted to absorb that big guy? Maybe all of them. As he got closer to his destination, more and more thoughts popped up in his mind. He didn't know why, but he couldn't calm down. The boy continued to move forward. Because of the boy's intrusion, some dark jungles were filled with restless sounds from all directions. The branches of the jungle were dense and the roots were entangled. It was difficult to trek through it. What's more, Uchiha Uranium itself was a supreme delicacy for the radiation soul beast. Suddenly, the boy stopped and looked around with some vigilance. The knife in his hand had been quietly pulled out at some point. The silver-gray blade flashed a faint silver light in the dark environment, like a light source or a guide. Suddenly, a beast swooped down from the high treetops. Swoosh! Suddenly, a white light flashed in the dark jungle, accompanied by the sound of a sharp blade entering the flesh. Before the Black Panther soul beast could scream, its throat was chopped off, and only a layer of skin on its head was still attached to its body. For a moment, the offense and defense changed easily. In just a blink of an eye, a soul beast that attacked first died. Uchiha Uranium pulled out the knife from a Black Panther soul beast, and the radiation eyes in his eyes exuded a faint evil, and the surrounding space began to distort. This is not his power, but the radiation energy gradually became enriched as his soul skills were activated. The next moment, the surroundings rioted. A stream of fishy wind and rotten air, mixed with a bloody smell of predators, rushed in. Blood-red eyeballs flashed in the jungle, and soul beasts of varying sizes, but quite crazy, emerged. Small beasts that were not usually seen, now came out in full force under the guidance of Uchiha Uranium's breath. In the entire radiation area, except for the forest lake area that was too far away, all soul beasts that were tempted by Uchiha Uranium's breath were dispatched. For radiation soul beasts, nothing is more tonic than the source of radiation. Save me the trouble of searching for them one by one. Come on. With a chuckle, Uchiha Uranium swung his knife in a flower. His face instantly became serious, his figure suddenly blurred, and he rushed forward at full speed, far exceeding the speed of the soul beasts. With a flash of the knife, the body of a soul beast was suddenly cut in two. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The unparalleled speed brings extremely terrifying kinetic energy, not to mention that this knife is not a blunt knife. Swish! The vines broke into two halves, and the whistling wind blew the strong grass. At this moment, Uchiha Uranium was like a silver-gray shadow, jumping around in the jungle, with a knife flashing, and all the soul beasts that hit the knife naturally split up. But Uchiha Uranium's method was not like that. In addition to the flash of the knife, there were also continuous daggers flying out, either pinning a soul beast or finishing off the guy who had not died after landing. Clang! A sound of cutting iron was heard, and a vague figure suddenly appeared in the air. The figure of the boy became clear. He held a knife in his right hand and secretly held some objects in his left hand. He collided rapidly with a very fast flying hunting bird in the air. The radiation martial spirit in his eyes turned quickly, with an inexplicable power, and a warm current came from inside his eyes. The 1,000-year-old flying hunting bird soul beast that was looking at Uchiha Uranium suddenly lost all its strength, loosened its wings, and fell from the air. The boy swung the knife to connect, easily cutting the long neck, and then gently fell to the ground. Before he could stand firm, the three soul beasts had already arrived in front of him. Without hesitation, he threw the hidden micro-trap in his hand, which landed at his feet, and then rolled quickly, out of the range of the attack. Then, Uchiha Uranium stepped on the stone with a big step, and jumped up to the tree trunk with force on his toes. A breath later, boom, the place exploded, and the violent impact accompanied by the high-heat ground spike soared into the sky. The three soul beasts were caught off guard and were hit immediately. One of them was shot on the head and died directly. The other two were not in a good situation. Their legs and feet were blown off, and the red and black blood flowed from the wounds, which looked particularly creepy. Destroy it. Uchiha Uranium looked at the tragic scene underground from the tree, and somehow, he actually smiled cruelly. The next moment, all the hidden micro-traps in his hand were scattered. Like flowers scattered by a fairy, they evenly fell around Uchiha Uranium, and then the traps disappeared into the ground. Everything around him was quiet. Chapter 57 Art is Explosion. The silence did not last long. It seemed that the explosion just now frightened them, but as time passed, the desire to devour in their minds gradually occupied the hearts of these soul beasts. The tranquility was broken in an instant. A roar. Suddenly, a beast roar came from a distance. The roar echoed in the forest, carrying a brutal momentum, sweeping across this quiet land. The next moment, a gray beast shadow flashed by and rushed straight towards Uchiha Uranium on the tree trunk. As one soul beast moved, the other soul beasts also moved one after another, gathered together, and rushed over fiercely like a wave. Boom! Boom! The surrounding soul beasts were in chaos. One after another, fiery red explosion spikes rose into the sky, with a loud blast, which greatly interfered with the positions of the soul beasts. Some soul beasts were even stimulated continuously, howling angrily and biting other soul beasts fiercely. But more soul beasts appeared around one after another, and then pounced on the moving boy. At some point, a large iron-gray flower was placed in a corner. A fishy breeze flashed by, causing the leaves to sway, as if dancing. A blood-red breath spread around. Although Uchiha Uranium's speed was fast, he couldn't keep it up. Soon, several soul beasts caught up with him, and then they attacked him frantically. Facing this crazy posture, the boy calmly swung his knife to fight, or cut off an arm, or chopped off the claws of a soul beast, but he was not used to this one-on-many battle. And if these supplements dared to attack him, they would have to be prepared to die here. Oh, by the way, the brains of these radioactive soul beasts are almost burned out. What kind of awareness can they have? After briefly killing all the soul beasts closest to him, Uchiha Uranium did not stop running, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, a black shadow flashed by. Suddenly, following his intuition, Uchiha Uranium grabbed the head of a snake soul beast with his free left hand. The third purple soul ring under his feet suddenly flashed, and an invisible force surged from his left hand. This soul skill power did not last long, but the snake soul beast in his hand lost its fierce momentum, as if its bones were pulled out. As his fingers loosened, it slowly fell to the ground, and the breath of life dissipated in an instant. Active effect, energy absorption. It was precisely because of the soul skill that he dared to use these soul beasts that were thousands of years old as supplements. If this soul skill is used to absorb radiation energy, then it can also extract the soul power cultivated by the soul beast along with the radiation energy and merge it into his body. What a domineering and terrifying power. At this moment, the soul power of the snake soul beast is quietly staying in his body, waiting for his digestion, or rather, not digesting it, but using it directly as a one-time soul power supplement, rather than a permanent improvement. Permanent improvement naturally takes time, and at the moment, it is more suitable as a supplement. As the power was absorbed, the soul power in Uchiha Uranium's body instantly recovered to 3/4 of its original value. Although the radiation trap just thrown out was only a one-ring soul skill, its power was gradually increasing as the soul power level increased. Correspondingly, the soul power consumption was also increasing. The main reason why Uchiha Uranium chose to leave the battlefield full of traps was that he threw too many traps. If he was not careful, he might be in danger, and his soul power was running out. At the moment, after absorbing the soul power of a 100-year soul beast, he could release dozens of traps. A brief calculation flashed through his mind. It only took one trap to blow up a beast, and it was possible to set up dozens of traps by absorbing one. Uchiha Uranium's eyes gradually lit up. Without hesitation, he turned around and walked towards the place with the most soul beasts in the radiation perception. Along the way, the traps in his hand were constantly thrown out like Timo planting mushrooms, either in front of him or at his feet. The next moment, the breath spread, and the nearby soul beasts were attracted. These soul beasts had ferocious faces and drooled in their mouths, wishing to cut the boy into pieces. After seeing him, they ignored everything and rushed over immediately. Then, there was a loud explosion. The explosion lasted for a whole afternoon, and all the soul beasts involved in the siege died tragically. These brainless guys finally remembered to run when they saw that the soul beasts around them were almost dead, but when Uchiha Uranium stepped forward, they immediately turned around and looked at him with a hideous face, rushing towards him madly to die. Naturally, none of these guys could run away. If Uchiha Uranium relied on himself alone and rushed like this with a knife, it would take an unknown amount of time to kill all these radioactive soul beasts that appeared continuously. You know, as long as the soul beasts are contaminated with a little radiation, they may accumulate it because of cultivation until they mutate. Unless he absorbs all the radiation from this land, otherwise, he will have to kill all the living things on the land. But this is exactly what bothers him. If he doesn't attract the aura of these guys, it would be really difficult for ordinary soul masters to deal with it. Or it would be a large-scale soul skill of the title Douluo. But this is the Xingdao Great Forest. Although it belongs to the border of the Shandao Empire, it is obvious that the Shandao Empire will not care about the life and death of such a place. The latest novel is published on the 69th book bar. As for the king of the forest, will Daming and Erming care about this place? The answer is of course yes. After all, This is their home. Although this radiation will fade a little bit with the passage of time, this time span is too long. I am afraid that ordinary soul beasts will die before this time. And how they should manage it is not a problem for Uchiha Uranium to worry about. He is not even at the level of title Douluo, and he doesn't know what soul skills Daming and Erming have to deal with this radiation field like bone-eating maggots. Uchiha Uranium has finished packing and is going to set off. After all, this radiation area is relatively small. After all, he has only lived there for one night. Although the radiation has contaminated the water source and caused a large area of spread, generally speaking, there is no abnormal monster that devours all soul beasts. And the monster in the forest lake he has to face is this kind. For a moment, Uchiha Uranium was a little absent-minded. He thought of Daming and Erming, as well as the cute girl with a pink face, Xiao. The clothes he is wearing now were given by her. Although it was 2 years ago, at this moment, when he looks at this ill-fitting and rough-made clothes, he always thinks of the past. It's not because of any feelings. He understands that Xiao hid far away outside the radiation range, commanded Erming to throw stones to attract his attention, and gave him clothes just out of pity for him. You know, 3 or 4 years ago, when they first met, he was forced to wear animal skins to survive. And the clothes Xiao gave him were not only a timely help, but also a feeling of being respected and recognized. Even now when he thinks back on it, he can't help but be touched deep in his heart. After wiping away his tears, Uchiha Uranium took a deep breath and took back the bitterness of the past years. His eyes became sharp again. He wiped the knife casually and looked into the distance, wondering what he was thinking. Well, there are 2 updates today. I am planning the final battle in the forest, but I have a writer's block for a while. Sorry, there will be no update below. By the way, the heroine has been decided, but for confidentiality, it is not convenient to say, but you will see it later. 886, I'm going to sleep first. I have to consider how to arrange it more reasonably tomorrow. Well, since I don't have 4 updates today, I'm embarrassed to ask you for recommendation votes and collections. Go and vote for the books you like. What? Isn't me your favorite? Chapter 58, Before the Battle. At night. The bonfire was burning quietly, making crackling sounds, illuminating the face of a young man beside the bonfire. The night breeze was blowing everywhere, blowing up strands of silver hair, fluttering in the wind. The surroundings were already dead silent. With a radiation infection over the years, at least in this area, there were no living creatures. Even if there were, they were radiation monsters that would eat people without leaving any bones. If nothing unexpected happens, when I reach the Soul Sect, I should be able to fully master this radiation power, and it will be just a matter of time before I get out of the forest. The young man leaned against a dry wooden stake, half lying beside the bonfire, without taking off his clothes, nor did he put the knife that had accompanied him for 4 years into the scabbard, but casually placed it aside, letting it emit a cold light. It was still 5 days away from the forest lake. During these 5 days, he had to absorb all the radiation monsters along the way, strive to reach level 40, and face the monster he had fought with in his prime. He seemed to have a premonition. This was what he had to do now. In the battle half a year ago, he fled in a panic, his body was covered in blood, his veins were bulging, and his head was dizzy. Today, half a year later, he has to challenge the inner demon he once faced again. Every night, that terrifying figure would appear in his mind, launching endless killings with a shaking attitude, or chasing him like a predator. He had nowhere to escape, and he was constantly experiencing the painful swallowing. Every time he was about to die, he would suddenly wake up. But now, as he got closer to his destination, this nightmare appeared less and less. I hope I don't die here. Suddenly, his dead face flashed in his mind. His death was extremely ugly, and in the end, he was eaten without a trace. At this moment, the bone-eating pain seemed to be empathized with, making his scalp numb. I hope so. The young man chuckled with a bit of carefreeness, raised his head, looked at the bright night sky, then lowered his head again, and began to carefully check the knife and dagger, and whether the clothes on his body were tied tightly, and whether there were any flaws. The old dagger had long been left in the monster's body. The one he carried now was made of the remaining materials, with more than 80 daggers in total, each of which was more than 40 centimeters long, with a blade of more than 35 centimeters. The ratio of the blade to the blade was completely non-standard, and it could even be said to be deformed. In order to train this deformed flying dagger, He trained for 2 months, and finally trained himself to hit wherever he pointed. There is no doubt that this kind of blade is extremely long and heavy, which is not suitable for throwing balanced fluid at all. It is for dealing with such a behemoth. He even has a giant leg knife, about 2.5 meters long and 2 meters long in the soul guide space. It was sharpened from the longest part of the steel-legged spider's body. He didn't take it out at the moment. After all, he hasn't reached the battlefield yet, and a 1.5-meter knife is enough for the time being. It is not easy to practice swordsmanship with this giant sword. He practiced for half a year before he made some achievements. If he wants to use this sword in his hand to deal with a giant monster that is 4 stories high and about 10 meters high, it is better to take a nap. He can dream about anything. It's not that he can't fight, but he is not strong enough. What can he do to hurt a large creature? The first soul skill trap is gone. The explosive spikes are not even as big as the palm of the hand, and the spikes are full of radiation. Maybe the monster will recover after eating the radiation. The extreme nuclear energy reaction also sends energy to the monster. In this case, the monster has become stronger and stronger. There is no possibility of letting it explode directly after eating. He once looked through the current classics and found that its prototype was actually a titan ape. As we all know, the physical strength of the titan ape is even stronger than that of the dragon. It is too difficult to expect radiation to kill it. The only chance to defeat the radioactive titan ape is the third soul ring, the energy absorption halo. The reason is simple. Radiation is an important energy for the radiation titan ape to maintain life and keep its body from collapsing. It has absorbed too much radiation, and even its wisdom and thinking have been burned out. The only reason it continues to exist is the strength of its body. Just like building blocks, the more radiation it eats, the taller the building will be. But what if Uchiha Uranium takes away a block from the bottom? One block is obviously not enough, but he can completely absorb the radiation energy it relies on for survival. If the energy in the body is not enough, it will naturally die in its own hands. He has used this trick before, but the object of the extraction was the radiation power in the surrounding air, and the effect was outstanding. But this kind of simple absorption to make the radiation titan ape's body collapse is obviously impossible in a short period of time, and it is still unknown whether it can be absorbed within a certain period of time. The most important thing is that he must get close to the battle to absorb the maximum extent, so there is a problem. How should he get close to the battle? This is why he trained himself and practiced a super long sword. He must be able to survive in close combat, otherwise everything is empty talk. The second point is that he has to use this sword to deal with those long and deadly waste tongues. Those things are like tentacles, which are extremely threatening to him, so just like the first battle, they must be dealt with first, otherwise the next battle will not be able to proceed. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Beside the campfire, Uchiha Uranium thought about many things. Not only the fighting method, the battlefield layout, but also other thinking directions. He had to take them into consideration one by one. This was the first time he encountered such an invincible and powerful enemy who restrained him. Although he was more restrained by the radiation titan ape, this feeling of having no place to use his power made him quite uncomfortable. And it was at this moment that he realized that he lacked a powerful soul skill for direct confrontation. Although the radiation is very strong, it takes time to destroy the opponent's body and spirit. If he does not hold on for a certain period of time, then the damage of radiation is meaningless. Although he is very fast, he can be called the first fast boy of his age group, but it is not fast enough. He needs more life-saving skills, or the power of direct confrontation, otherwise running away alone will not solve any problems. The boy was silent, and many thoughts flashed through his mind, but they were dispelled one by one. He was not a very smart person. In his previous life, he could only be regarded as an ordinary student. Even the direction of his study was not such nuclear energy, radiation, fusion fission, atomic nucleus, neutron nucleus, but ordinary garden design. He had imagined more than once what life would be like after controlling nuclear energy, whether it was to go deep into the body, extract these powers, and use them as the power source of certain things, such as Gundam and Mecha. Or to use the huge and endless energy in the body to make some interesting things, such as Big Ivan, Little Boy, hydrogen bomb and neutron bomb. In the future, whenever there is a force that wants to kill him, he will send some gifts to them and send them to nuclear destruction. But at this moment, after the fantasy is over, he is still just a weak human being. Swoosh. After wiping the blade, Uchiha Uranium stood up straight, set up traps all around, and then laid down beside the fire, gradually closing his eyes. 5 days later, it would be time for the decisive battle. Chapter 59: The Calm Before the Storm. The next morning, Uchiha Uranium set off early. In the dark and deep quiet woods, the gray branches and leaves were like dust flying around with a breeze in the forest. The dense leaves had withered at some point, no longer blocking the scorching sun, allowing the light to shine on the increasingly desolate land. This is a land where even soul beasts no longer survive. Even if the soul beasts from the outside world are dead, they will not rashly enter this world full of death, destruction and collapse. But in the dense forest, on the gray-brown soil, there was a young man in gray-white clothes who was walking silently against the endless despair of the soul beasts. Behind him was a giant sword that was much taller than him. The blade was sharp on one side, flashing a faint cold light, piercing the heart. The young man had a ponytail tied neatly behind him, a dagger like a skirt armor hung on his waist, and a commonly used knife was placed on the right side. His hands were free and placed on both sides of his body. Layers of white bandages were wrapped around his arms, and the ends were connected to his palms. As long as he pulled them casually, he could take them all off. At this moment, Uchiha Uranium was just strolling at home, not paying any attention to the ghosts and gloom. He was already fully armed. He was not facing a fool who would just stand there and wait for his favor. Although the radioactive Titan ape had no brain, its sense of smell was still there. As long as he appeared in the perception range of that guy, the soul beast would come and attack without his initiative. And this active and passive combat experience is different in safety. On the one hand, he was fully prepared, and on the other hand, he was forced to fight, and the winning rate can be imagined. The price of failure is to be eaten alive. He walked on the road he had been before, just like walking into the past. When he was young, he lived by the lake in the forest, practicing and studying every day until he could no longer live around, and then he left and went to a new residence. And now, he is already 13 years old, crossing the river, walking through the forest, and now stepping into the place where he used to live. This inexplicable taste makes him a little overwhelmed. People look forward, but he is walking towards the past. As they got closer to their destination, the surrounding environment became more and more bizarre. Radiation can change plant cells, but more plants will die because of this change. Nothing is left except rotten and weird branches. After walking for a day, there is no trace of the radiation soul beast. This strange scene makes Uchiha Uranium a little nervous. You know, in the past, as long as he stood here, countless soul beasts that sensed him would rush over, but at this moment, the surroundings were as quiet as if there were no soul beasts. After thinking about it, he came to a conclusion. This is already the hunting range of the radiation titan ape. If I guessed correctly, any monster with a little soul beast breath is within its menu range. As long as it sees it, it will be a snack. Be careful. After muttering to himself, Uchiha Uranium put his hand on the knife and slowly pulled it out. The other hand began to condense the trap pattern, throwing it at will every few steps, not worrying about the consumption of soul power at all. His body still stored all the essence of the dead soul beasts in the battle yesterday. He only digested a very small part of it last night, and most of the rest was stored in his body for temporary soul power replenishment. It was like the milk bottle in Douluo Continent II, except that his was an exclusive limited edition, and it didn't take time, so he could use it whenever he wanted. Unfortunately, he might not have the chance to have it again after leaving the forest. The breeze blew gently, bringing with it gusts of unnatural fishy wind. At his current speed, if he walked like this, he would be able to reach the forest lake in about 4 days. If he walked faster, the time could be further shortened. But if the monster sensed his breath and took the initiative to rush towards him, then the time could not be estimated in this way. But what was certain was that he was absolutely safe for at least 2 days. Before he came, there were a large number of radioactive soul beasts living here. If the radioactive titan giant ape could come here, it would definitely not let go of these delicacies. And these soul beasts, to put it bluntly, were just mutated, and were not as good as the monster with a festering body and no mind. I don't know how much it has mutated in the past 6 months. Uchiha Uranium was silent for a moment when he thought of this. His eyes flickered, but even with all these complicated thoughts, his steps never stopped, and he steadily moved forward. That world was like a dry earth. The next day, at night, a blue figure quietly opened the door, tiptoed pack up her luggage, and walked out of the dormitory quietly. But just as she left the corridor and was about to go outside the college, suddenly, a slight voice came. "Xiao Wu, are you going out?" The blue figure suddenly turned around, followed the source of the voice, and moved her eyes behind her, and saw a black-haired boy who had just closed the dormitory door and walked slowly towards her. The boy was about 1.6 meters tall, with black semi-long hair hanging over his ears. He looked handsome and had a faint smile on his lips. He was wearing a light blue college uniform, very neat, and a belt inlaid with 24 jade stones around his waist, giving people a feeling of being very approachable. "Xiao-san, it's you. I was so scared. I thought it was someone else." The blue figure gradually walked under the light. What came into view was a head of silky black hair, combed into neat scorpion braid style, slowly falling behind her. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. She was wearing the same blue robe as Tang Sen, but it was a female college uniform. She was half a centimeter taller than the boy. Her gradually developing figure was tightly wrapped by the uniform, outlining a seductive arc, and her face became clear. Her eyebrows were slightly curved, she had a pair of big watery eyes, a small and delicate nose, attractive pink lips, a tender face, beautiful but not coquettish. The girl in front of her was not only cute, but also gave people a feeling that she could only be admired from a distance. Xiao Wu's expression was somewhat helpless at the moment. She wanted to go back quietly, but she was seen by Xiao-san on the way. The girl sighed slightly and began to think quickly in her mind about how to explain the reason for going back. Tang San's eyesight was so sharp. He practiced a purple extreme demon pupil. Even in such a dim environment, he could see the helplessness and sigh on Xiao Wu's face. For a moment, he was in a dilemma. He and Xiao Wu were siblings. They had a tacit understanding. If she had any difficulties, she would definitely tell him. But now she was so entangled that it was difficult to speak. The next moment, when Xiao Wu was still hesitating about what to say, Tang San smiled and said, "I will block the teacher for you. Come back quickly." "Huh? Xiao-san, don't you ask?" Now it was Xiao Wu's turn to be stunned. She hadn't thought about it yet, but Tang San didn't ask. Then, Xiao Wu seemed to have thought of something, giggled, approached Tang San, put her face close to the boy's face, and whispered to Tang San, "Thank you, brother." The warm and moist air suddenly rushed towards Tang San's face, and the unique fragrance of the girl entered his nose, with an inexplicable smell, constantly stimulating his nasal cavity, making Tang San have the urge to sneeze. "You must have sprayed perfume, right?" Just everyone is wondering why the book is so deserted, because recently Kidian has closed the comments and chapters. Although I can see all the comments in the background here, you can't actually see the comments posted by others, and you can't see the comments you posted, so this is the case. In addition, the Titan giant ape is a tribe in the setting of Douluo 1, and the race value is very strong. So far, only Haoshin Douluo Tanghao has obtained a spirit ring, and there is no record of others being killed. So the uniqueness in Douluo 3 is not true in Douluo 1. In addition, the reason why the fierce beasts such as Dawn, BG, and Dark Gold Terror Clawbear did not appear in Douluo 1 is that it is possible that when Duming and Erming were not yet 100,000-year soul beasts, they had already captured Beyond Meng, and absorbed it next to the lair of the 100,000-year soul beast, so it was not in the central lake. The records say it is in the center of the Xingdao Great Forest, but I think the area where 100,000-year soul beasts live must not be far from the center, right? Chapter 60 Bloody Conflict. Time passed by little. After only 3 days, the roads around him changed completely, and they were completely subdued by the power of radiation. The gray oil began to turn black, with a slight stench. Just turning this oil casually would bring a feeling of fatigue that would make ordinary people dizzy. None of the dead trees nearby survived, and all the branches and leaves withered, revealing bare gray branches, as if they were screaming silently. The desperate silence lingered around, making people uncomfortable. The further you go, the greater the pressure, as if the invisible pressure is oppressing this land. With every step forward, the creepy feeling behind your body becomes more and more solid. Under this pressure, Uchiha Uranium's face also became a little ugly. This situation is too special. He was not like this the last time he came. This can only mean one thing. That guy may have reached the next level, and it is definitely not just what he has seen. Swoosh. Uchiha Uranium slowly straightened the giant sword behind him, put it in front of him, and then slowly grasped it in his hand with a force. Using both hands, the blade flashed with a chilling sharpness. It lived up to the name of the steel-leg spider. This killing weapon completely surpassed ordinary steel knives. Even weapons with weapon spirits were more powerful than this guy. Maybe it's almost there. The young man whispered. He began to slowly untie the white bandage wrapped around his arm, and bit by bit, he completely wrapped the sword with his palm to prevent it from slipping out of his hand due to the knife flicking or other reasons. Although this large weapon also restricted his movements, he really had no good way to face the monster. The speed of bleeding with a small knife was not as fast as the speed of the monster's own recovery, which was really a bit torturous. Boom! In the distance, a sudden roar came. The oppressive, dull, and earth-shaking vibrations continued to come, like the continuous beating of war drums, one by one, knocking his heart. Boom! A fragile tree next to the tree was directly crushed by the impact brought by the vibration. With a harsh and decaying sound of creaking, it gradually collapsed to the ground, raising thick radioactive dust and rising to the sky. The vibration was getting closer and closer. Dust continued to fly, and the entire battlefield seemed to be submerged in gray-black dust, flying lightly all over the sky, and the vision was completely blocked, and the surrounding situation could not be seen clearly. There was only the vibration sound that was getting closer and closer, and the staring feeling behind him like a needle was constantly increasing. The surrounding environment was nothing to Uchiha Uranium. The next moment, the radiation eye carrying two black fan-shaped megatoma appeared in his pupils, slowly rotating in one direction. There was no more obstruction in his eyes. Under the gaze of the elemental eye, nothing could escape, including the long tongue in front of him. Clang! A harsh sound of metal clashing came. In an emergency, Uchiha Uranium did not choose to retreat, but stood his sword horizontally, exerted force on his heels, and resisted the sudden attack of the long tongue. Huh? After a moment, Uchiha Uranium's soul ring appeared, and the three soul rings kept moving up and down. Then, the figure flashed, suddenly left the original place, and disappeared in the thick dust. Swish! As soon as the figure disappeared, three whip shadows turned around and came, banging on the spot with a sharp sound of breaking through the air, and actually whipped out a round pit, scattering large pieces of oil and splashing everywhere. Roar retracted the long tongue, and a dissatisfied low roar came from the thick dust. The radiation source that was originally within its perception was now completely obscured by the high concentration of radioactive dust. It could not see anything with its eyes alone. Under Uchiha Uranium's elemental pupils, although the light gray radioactive dust obscured the eyes, it was far less eye-catching than the blood-red monster in the field of vision. Uchiha Uranium silently took out a piece of cloth with his free hand and wrapped it around his face to prevent himself from inhaling too much dust. Radiation is not terrible, but these tiny particles are extremely deadly to him. The next moment, the boy held the handle of the knife tightly, and the elemental pupil stared at the various body conditions of the radiation titan ape. The blade turned, and without hesitation, he suddenly rushed forward with the knife. Whoosh! The perception of the radiant titan ape was far more sensitive than Uchiha Uranium thought. I don't know what it relied on, but before he got close, several dark red whip shadows rushed straight towards him. At this moment, Uchiha Uranium showed that even though he was controlling the long sword and his skills were limited, he still had the ultimate accurate judgment to cut off the long tongue in midair. Although this monster has become more terrifying, he couldn't beat it at level 33, but it doesn't mean that he is not an opponent now at level 39. The blade swung, and with a sound like cutting cloth, the long tongue that was as tough as cowhide was cut off from the middle, and fell to the ground with a snap, and dirty blood flowed. Roar! Suddenly, the world was quiet. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. In Uchiha Uranium's horrified eyes, the dust in the surrounding air suddenly solidified in midair, and he was also the same. The originally unparalleled forward momentum came to an abrupt end and was stagnant halfway. Boom! Exclamation mark. After a breath, it seemed like a slight roar, or a fierce roar that had existed since ancient times. As the gradually drifting thoughts returned, endless air waves burst out from the monster's body. The surrounding gray dust was blown away in an instant, and the violent soul power shock wave slammed into Uchiha Uranium's chest. There was a sound of shattering from the chest. The boy's face changed immediately, and he couldn't bear it anymore, and a stream of reverse blood sprayed out. With this huge force, the boy was blown away, and then he fell to the ground without resistance. Puff. After landing, he spit out another mouthful of thick blood. For a moment, the boy's face was pale. Sensing something was wrong, Uchiha Uranium let out a low roar and instantly turned over and half knelt, enduring the soreness and pain all over his body. Fortunately, he had bandages tied on, otherwise the sword would have been blown away. Suddenly, it darkened above his head. Danger! Exclamation mark. Hide. The radiation amalgama spun wildly, and the body that had not yet stood firm suddenly exerted force, and the figure became blurred. He resisted the tearing pain in his thighs and arms, and passed through the crotch of the radiation titan ape. The discomfort from all over his body almost made his eyes black, and blood rushed to his throat, but then the violent shock wave from behind hit the ground like a thunder. It came so fast. This was Uchiha Uranium's first feeling. He had no time to think about the sudden stillness of space and the strong shock wave. He was now at the feet of the radiation titan ape, and more than a dozen dark red long tongues shot out, twisting in disorder, like a wild dance of gods and demons. No more tonight, I'm going to sleep. Everyone, the recommended posts are not good. I beg you not to support the book. It's easy to die, crying, sob. The editor in charge looks at the follow-up reading, and I just found out that for the editor, the collection of recommendation tickets is worthless, only the follow-up reading is valuable. I cried. I feel so bad. In fact, if you want to support the book, I update super fast, so there is no need to support it at all. Chapter 61 Power Absorption. Boom. There was only a loud explosion, and the invisible shock wave carried countless particles of dust, which splashed everywhere, leaving an abrupt vacuum zone in the original place. A stream of shadows flashed by, and the pale blade light rolled up a large piece of dust. With a puff, a dark red muscle tissue like a long snake suddenly broke with a teeth-grinding cracking sound, fell to the ground, and black blood slowly flowed out. The next moment, a figure suddenly stepped on it and stepped deeply into the black radioactive soil. Rushing quickly, Uchiha Uranium trembled, and the wounds on his body burst one by one, but the long sword in his hand was held tighter and tighter, and the joints turned white. Die! With a loud shout, the breath circulated, the soul power surged, and the boy's originally tense muscles suddenly bounced open. Then, as Uchiha Uranium used the explosive power of his own body, his body strangely rotated an arc, with himself as the midpoint. The long sword lightly wiped, and cut through the monster's ankle as if nothing happened, and a large piece of black plasma burst out under the pressure. Boom 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 boom. The ground under Uchiha Uranium's feet suddenly collapsed, producing a series of explosions. Gray dust gathered again at some point, and shadows flashed. A huge monster figure suddenly swung its arms, and more than a dozen dark red long tongues with gusts of fishy wind flew towards the boy in a weird posture. The speed was extremely fast, like thunder and lightning. At the same time, a stream of strange power flew past, covering him like light. Uchiha Uranium clearly felt that when it moved at this moment, everything around him became solemn, and his body seemed to slow down a lot. The speed that was originally like a fleeting light continued to decrease, and everything in front of him seemed to be slightly distorted. Fuck you. When did you learn domain? There was a giant arm in front of him and a whip shadow behind him. At the critical moment, Uchiha Uranium did not dodge or resist. He simply raised his long sword, turned his body, and the radiation martial spirit turned wildly. His body twisted, and he put the blade sideways in front of him, sending himself to the whip shadow. He seemed to be attacking suicidal without caring about his life. Bang! Crash! Two sounds came out at the same time. Uchiha Uranium was deliberately hit by the whip shadow of the radiation titan giant ape. He flew backwards and jumped at least dozens of meters. He hit a tree hard, and the dead branches trembled immediately, and then collapsed with a loud bang, raising a large piece of radioactive dust, burying Uchiha Uranium in it. There were black spots in front of his eyes, and a burning feeling surged all over his body. The hot blood that kept surging inside his body mixed with soul power to blow away the particles on his body. Uchiha Uranium lay flat on the body of the tree and took a deep breath. Then he turned over instantly. That's right, the Titan ape race has the power of gravity field. The 100,000-year-old soul beast Erming is a prominent example, but what he faced was not a field, but a field power that was gradually developed. If it was really a gravity field, he would have died long ago. 10 times the G-gravity in an instant, relying on one's own flesh, if not adapted in advance, would be directly crushed in 1 second. This is not the astronaut's space, he is on the ground. And now, Uchiha Uranium can't laugh. He guessed right. Just a few dozen meters away, this extremely oppressive gravity field power dissipated in an instant. And if he gets close again, I'm afraid he will be in danger of his life, but if he doesn't get close, he can completely absorb its power. Now it's just the beginning of the war, and it's already so tricky. It's really hard to imagine that radiation has this ability to awaken the gravity field power in the blood of this guy who has no intelligence at all. Although it's not very strong, it will definitely reach the level of arming in the future. The essence of radiation is high energy particles, lightning, and the sun are all of this kind. The fundamental reason why our radiation can kill humans and plants is that the cells and molecular structures of humans and plants cannot withstand the impact and energy brought by high energy particles. The radiation titan giant ape in front of him seemed to have awakened the power in his blood with the energy brought by radiation. What the hell? Cursing secretly, Uchiha Uranium moved again, but his hand had quietly been placed at his waist. The next moment, a flash of light suddenly disappeared from his hand. Then, he threw it hard. Roar! The giant beast seemed to be shot into something vital. With a roar, the surrounding soul power fluctuations instantly rioted, the giant hand tumbled, the sharp claws of the black light tore up and down, and the whip shadow was frantic, intending to find the attacker. In the gray dust, a cold, iron-like blade flashed, and Uchiha Uranium moved again. The next moment, like a dance, he resisted the slow power of the domain, and pushed his soul power to the extreme. With a flash, he cut its feet again, causing large pieces of rotten flesh to fall off, and a disgusting smell came to his face. Swish, the long sword rolled, and the endless whip shadows seemed to be full of loopholes at this moment, and there was no trace of the boy at all. Instead, large pieces of flesh and blood were cut off from his legs, and the bones were visible. The flesh and blood flew around, like a pale skeleton. Squeak, squeak. Continuously, as Uchiha Uranium's soul power circulated throughout his body, under the blessing of soul power, the originally slowed figure actually blurred again, and the second soul skill extreme nuclear energy reaction was fully activated. The whip shadows that were originally as fast as lightning were cut off by Uchiha Uranium at this moment, and black blood flowed. But this high energy radiation also caused the monster to enter a state of rapid recovery. It was visible to the naked eye that the right calf, which had been stripped of flesh and blood, began to rapidly proliferate granulation. You ate my radiation, I want you to spit it all out. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. For a moment, Uchiha Uranium, who realized that it was impossible to create an effective wound with a knife alone, changed his mind again. While thinking, in addition to cutting off the long tongue with a knife, he also gradually began to stabilize his breath. After several jumps, he jumped onto its body and suddenly pressed his left hand on its thigh. It was prickly. At the first moment, Uchiha Uranium pressed on the stone-like stiff muscles of the radiation titan ape. The prickly hair stood up like a hedgehog, with a discomfort that made people reluctant to touch it. The next moment, the flesh came into contact, and the iron-gray dead flesh seemed to soften in an instant. As the third soul ring moved under Uchiha Uranium's feet, the active effect energy absorption aura was activated, and a sufficient soul power mixed with a strong radiation force was drawn out from the contact surface of the radiation titan giant ape, and it seemed to flow back, and it all poured into Uchiha Uranium's body. In the body that was invisible to the naked eye, a black gas mass slowly took shape. The energy just inhaled was quickly merged into the body after entering it, and turned into a soul energy mass waiting to be absorbed. Boom. Suddenly, a fishy wind pressed from above, and a giant hand, like catching a mosquito, grabbed Uchiha Uranium brazenly. The sudden weakness of soul power made the radiation titan giant ape furious and crazy. There are still 4 more chapters, don't worry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 I exploded. Boom, the airflow rolled. Uchiha Uranium released his hand from the body of the radiant titan ape, and flew down rapidly against the gravity, dodging the slap of the giant claw. Then he pulled out a flying dagger, thrust it into the tender flesh between its 2 fingers. He didn't know if this tender flesh was still useful, but he had to try it anyway. He had cut off all the things that looked like tentacles and tongues, but he had to be more careful next time. This guy had too many arms and heads. If he wasn't careful, he would die here. The various soul skills he had encountered before also made him feel depressed. With a controlled roar, he instantly raised waves, trampled exclusively, and had the power of gravity. With all these abilities, he didn't think of looking down on this guy at all. Clang. After landing easily, Uchiha Uranium took action again, without stopping, dragging the long sword backwards, surrounding the giant beast, and opening the elemental pupils. The orange, yellow, and black magatama in the pupils intersected, with an unhuman smell and a cold breath. A blood-red body appeared in the field of vision, with dark brown dots densely covering the whole body, densely packed, with a most on the chest and waist. On its chest was a huge ape-like head, but it looked extremely ferocious, with two bald, sunken, pitch-black eyes, and a huge gap in the center that occupied 4/5 of the entire head, like lips, but without teeth. From its mouth, you could vaguely see some tiny tentacles sticking out, which was extremely terrifying. Roar the radiation titan ape slowly turned its body, with 3 heads, 1 on the chest, and 2 on the shoulders. Its 6 eyes stared at Uchiha Uranium, which was constantly circling around him. Its bloodthirsty and brutal eyes revealed an endless desire to devour. Its purple-black chaotic pupils were rarely clear at this moment, and then, a black turbid light silently crossed the sky. Without causing any gusts of wind or impact, it flashed through its eyes at an extremely fast speed, and as if predicting, it blasted towards Uchiha Uranium's root. Boom! Exclamation mark. There was no blood or broken meat. In the dazzling flash, a series of ring-shaped shock waves melted everything with high heat. On the ground, dust flew up, and a semicircular bowl-shaped gray-black light shield slowly rose, turning everything around into nothingness. Suddenly, between heaven and earth, this gloomy gray haze land exploded, revealing a huge purple-black pit in the original place. The rolling gray gas continued to rise, and there was no human figure in it. The next moment, a figure suddenly flashed out from the ground, with a faint afterimage, and accompanied by the roar in the pit. The residual heat of the earth was still emitting steaming heat at this moment, and it was vaguely seen that half of the blade was still stuck in the place, completely broken. Huh? Uchiha Uranium fled in an instant, and after a few jumps, he was far away from the original place. His expression was extremely terrified, his face was pale, but his whole body was red, like a steamed crab, emitting a faint meaty fragrance. All his clothes were torn and burned, his lips were bloodshot, his eyes were bloodshot, his blades were all melted, and even half of his long sword was melted. What happened just now was too horrifying. If he hadn't used the maximum energy absorption aura at the critical moment to corrode all the terrifying energy around him, absorbing the nothingness and high temperature, he would probably not be just like this now. But even so, the residual heat around him also burned all his equipment. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been completely killed. What kind of move is this? He had never seen such a powerful move before. If his soul power hadn't been able to persist in using energy absorption, and the absorbed energy could also replenish himself, otherwise he would have died under this move with just a moment of high temperature. Sensing the giant beast, Uchiha Uranium calmed down while walking slowly, keeping a certain distance from the giant beast. He looked at the empty hand, then looked at the giant beast staring at him, and was a little flustered for a while, but after taking a deep breath, he calmed down again. It doesn't matter, at least he's still alive. With his upper body naked, Uchiha Uranium gently stroked the space soul guide on the ring on his left hand with his right hand, intending to take out some spare knives, but after touching it twice, he could not sense the space of the soul guide. Huh? While he was stunned, suddenly, a fishy wind blew. A backflip, followed by the flash of the second soul ring, and his figure came to the right rear of the giant beast in an instant like a ghost. The worst result appeared, but he couldn't give up now. As long as he didn't die, he would have a chance. The soul guide exploded under the attack just now. Fuck. Cursing secretly, as time went by, the burst wounds on Uchiha Uranium's body had healed to the point where no scars could be seen. The extreme nuclear energy reaction could bring him a very strong life recovery speed. At this moment, he had nothing but nothing, and his condition was no worse than when he had just fought. He didn't even have his clothes, what a thing. With a slight movement of his arm, the third soul ring was activated again. With a rhythm, A steady stream of soul power and radiation energy was absorbed into his body. Without the restraint of the equipment on his body, at this moment, Uchiha Uranium showed a more agile and terrifying action than before. The radiation titan ape was visibly weakened after the attack just now, and when he saw that Uchiha Uranium was still alive, he suddenly let out a shocking roar. The next moment, after the previous roar, the black hole-like huge mouth on the chest of the radiation titan ape slowly grew larger, and deep black mist leaked out. Then, this terrifying head let out a thunderous roar. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The visible ring-shaped sound waves exploded, as if time and space were suspended. In an instant, Uchiha Uranium's body stopped moving, his thoughts were interrupted, and his stiff body remained in place. After a breath, the whole space seemed to be boiling. The beast's body was full of airflow, and everything around it was shattered by a huge shock wave. It can be clearly seen that under an invisible but powerful force, Uchiha Uranium's body was baptized by a landslide and tsunami. His body was blown away and turned into a black shadow, which fell in the distance and could not move. How can a 20,000-year-old soul beast be so strong? Is it going to die? When his consciousness was blurred, Uchiha Uranium seemed to see a huge black shadow rising into the sky, as if the sun was also covered. At this moment, Uchiha Uranium opened his eyes wide and looked at the darkening sky. Somehow, a figure flashed in his mind: his father, his mother, his grandfather, and Xiaowu, who treated him very well. Ugh. I can't die, dot. Don't worry about the update. I've already had 3 cups of coffee in a row. I'm going to code it without sleeping. You can go to bed early. There will be an update tomorrow. Go. Chapter 63, Radiation Field. Time passed so slowly. Something like tears flowed from the corners of his eyes. At this moment, new strength seemed to emerge in his body, supporting Uchiha Uranium's body. He exerted force on his arms suddenly. The severe pain from the muscle tearing was like a refreshing drink, which prevented his mind from being dizzy. Uchiha Uranium looked like a devil. The strong shock wave made him bleed from all 7 orifices, and he looked like a madman. The next moment, the boy rolled and crawled, with an endless desire to survive. Even if it hurt, he had to get away from here. Boom. The sky collapsed and the earth sank. The Taishan mountain was pressing down, and endless pressure fell from the sky, carrying a strong sense of tyranny and chaos, like a tsunami, and fell to the ground with a bang. Endless smelly oil was shaken up to the sky, and shot down like rain, wantonly bombarding all the surrounding areas. In the mud pit, the hills sunken, the vegetation tumbled, the earth was in a mess, and the smelly soil continued to cover the traces around. There was no abnormality at all, and even the high concentration of radiation in the perception disappeared without a trace, but this did not calm the radiation titan ape down, but made it even more manic. It wants to eat. It wants to eat. Boom, a little fluctuation. In a natural depression covered by the smelly soil, Uchiha Uranium closed his eyes and breathed gently. The radiation particles on his body stopped moving quietly at some point, and no radiation reaction was emitted. The second soul ring slowly emitted a purple light, illuminating the surrounding squeezed environment. The body that was originally unconscious began to recover rapidly under the life recovery amplification of the extreme nuclear energy reaction. In the pupils, 3 fan-shaped black megatoms were slowly rotating, and the nuclear cells in the body began to work, constantly repairing the body and strengthening the body. The blood in the corner of his eye left a red mark. The life and death obviously brought him strong emotional fluctuations and spiritual power. The breakthrough of the 3 megatoma also confirmed this. It can be said that his talent completely surpassed that of other Uchiha clan members and stood at the pinnacle of their lives. Ahem, the boy slowly opened his eyes, and the tingling pain all over his body gradually disappeared. The increase brought by the nuclear cells to his body was not just a little bit, it was an extremely terrifying increase. Even 10 immortal grasses could not compare to the nuclear cells all over his body. The energy brought by the cells, under the condition of the 3 megatoma radiation eyes, completely awakened, and repaired his body in the first time, and made him regain consciousness quickly. After waiting for a while, there was still no high concentration of breath around, and the radiation titan giant ape slammed the ground in an instant. The earth shook, and the shrill and brutal roar continued to come out, but the next moment, it stopped abruptly. A human figure wrapped in invisible light and rhythmic energy slowly struggled to stand up from under the ground. A deep breath brought out a twisted wind, blowing the dust around, and the smelly soil fell close to his body, slowly falling, but the figure suddenly didn't realize that he was being stared at by a giant beast. He raised his head, and the 3 Megadama radiation eyes in his eyes looked directly at the tall radiation titan ape. His eyes seemed to penetrate the flesh and could see the huge figure in the distance and everything contained in his body. This monster is really strong. Yu sighed sincerely in his heart. Uchiha Uranium stood on the ground that was destroyed into a flat bottom, feeling that the hidden injuries and fractures in his body were all healed, but there was no relief in his eyes, but incomparably solemn. This time it was not that he was sure that he would be able to awaken the 3 Megadama, but he himself did not expect that the battle that he thought was at least 50-50 was actually only 0 to 10. He was on the side of 0. Even if he was asked to do it again, facing the challenge as before, feeling despair, and feeling death, he could not guarantee that he would successfully awaken the 3 Megadama and then escape with difficulty. And now, feeling the endless power in his body, the nuclear cells continue to divide and reorganize new cells, and the fission continues to evolve. The energy brought by this continuously strengthens the body and changes the real inner self. The benefits of awakening 3 Megadama are far greater than those of 2 Megadama. This is already the pinnacle of the radiation eye. Unless it goes one step further and achieves a kaleidoscope, there is no possibility of being stronger. Of course, at least now, he can clearly say that he has one. Roar. Accompanied by a violent and huge sound like a dragon roaring and a tiger roaring, the sound waves vibrated, and the black blood in the body also roared and roared. In conjunction with the vibration of the huge body, it actually formed a deep and thick sound, and the atmosphere was torn apart by this sound. Then, there was a vibration like an earthquake, and the radiation titan giant ape fell to the ground with its limbs, running towards him rapidly. Do you still think you can kill me now? Stupid guy. Uchiha Uranium raised his head high, and the black fan-shaped J turned wildly. The power unique to this pair of eyes continued to radiate and distort the world around him. At this moment, the world full of nuclear particles and radiation was in turmoil. Endless high-energy particles continued to collide, and the radiation concentration in this area was much higher than the outside world. At this moment, in a world full of radiation, he was the emperor. As long as I get excited, it's enough to take your life. The latest novel is first published in Liuji 9 Shuba. After seeing that the radiation titan ape did not stop, but ran towards him more frantically, Uchiha Uranium's face gradually became hideous, as if he was suffering great torture, and as if he felt the pain he had suffered. As the monster got closer and closer, he spoke word by word, as if releasing all his anger. Kneel down in front of the true power of my eyes. Boom. In an instant, the sky and the earth changed color. In front of him, a huge sonic boom sounded, and the boiling and twisted air was shaken. A terrifying force like a landslide and a tsunami was surging wildly in this area. The giant beast that had been rushing forward with the momentum of waves seemed to be oppressed by the earth, the sky, the air, and even its own body. Its limbs were broken immediately, bent unnaturally, and knelt on the ground. This is the power that controls everything. This is radiation field. Die for me. Everything is under his control, and all the radiation energy is his power. As long as he wants, as long as he is willing, any radiation creature, including the most powerful radiation monster in history, cannot resist him, and is not qualified to resist. As soon as the voice fell, this monster that once brought him endless nightmares and endless torture, under the power of the radiation field, all the energy inside the body was instantly detonated, and it died quietly without even making a painful wail. Uchiha Uranium's expression gradually calmed down. Although the pupil power in his eyes can bring great power, it always feels like it will make him more and more paranoid. Just like just now, he didn't even know that he had such a second-year side. At this moment, it was as if something shameful in his body awakened. Are all Uchiha crazy? Unconsciously, Uchiha Uranium muttered, and then set his eyes on the radiation titan ape in front of him that had been killed by the huge amount of radiation energy in its body. And the rich purple-black light gradually floated out of its body, and then slowly formed above it. At this moment, it is the best time to absorb it. Chapter 64, The 10,000-Year Spirit Ring Beyond the Limit. Uchiha Uranium was silent, looking at the purple-black soul ring in front of him, and for a moment, he was a little hesitant. It is true that he did awaken the third Megadama, and the soul ring produced by the radiation giant beast in front of him would be extremely adaptable to himself, and could even be absorbed across years, but the degree of leap was too great. The third soul ring was only purple for 7,000 years, and the fourth soul ring became 20,000 years. Whether he could make such a leap was still unknown. Let's give it a try. I am now in my prime, and the Megadama has also evolved. If it doesn't work, I will use the accumulated soul power of the soul beast to protect my body. I will take this 10,000-year soul ring. After a moment, Uchiha Uranium made up his mind. Then, he closed his eyes and opened his right hand slightly. The power brought by the radiation field allowed him to completely control all the radiation energy around him and the surroundings, including all the power of this giant beast. If the absorption and digestion are complete, then from his current point of view, he can at least be promoted to level 44. Raising his right hand, the three Megadama radiation eyes in his eyes slowly turned. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Uranium summoned the soul ring of the radiation titan ape. The purple-black light seemed to have finally found the organization after waiting for a long time. As soon as it felt Uchiha Uranium's martial spirit, it immediately swarmed towards Uchiha Uranium like a sea embracing hundreds of rivers. The rich purple-black light enveloped his body in an instant, as if he was thrown into the arms of his mother. Under the radiation field, this soul ring born from the strongest radiation monster did not make Uchiha Uranium feel burning, or the feeling of boiling flames. Instead, it shrank into a small black ring, imprinted in his eyes, with a comfortable heat flow, suddenly pouring into his eyes, and the gentle breath began to transform his body as soon as it entered Uchiha Uranium's body. Although the energy contained in the soul ring has no consciousness, in Uchiha Uranium's perception, the two are like one. The power cultivated by the soul beast accumulated in the body began to blend with the soul ring energy and began to evaporate rapidly. Under the strong fluctuation of soul power, Uchiha Uranium felt that his body was like being soaked in hot water, swollen all over, and the discomfort in various parts of his body made him frown, but the current situation was still bearable. As the soul power of the soul ring continued to absorb and strengthen his body, gradually, a black mist began to gradually emerge from his body, which looked exactly like the mist released from the chest and head of the radiation titan ape before. And this mist began to wrap around his whole body, including his naked body. As time passed, from time to time in the mist, the crackling sound of bones came, and every time the sound came out, it would bring a dull and suppressed cry of pain, and as time passed, this kind of physical strengthening and transformation became more and more intensive. It is true that the power of the soul ring is indeed as obedient as a young swallow returning to the nest, but its huge energy is something that Uchiha Uranium cannot absorb normally. If it were not for his physical enhancement brought by the three Megadama and the infinite strengthening of the nuclear cells in his body, it is likely that he could only absorb the fourth soul ring of about 10,000 years. And what he is absorbing now is a full 20,000 years. When Tang-san absorbed the 10,000-year-old crypt spider, he had to eat several immortal herbs, enter the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and attach an external soul bone before he dared to absorb it. This is completely different from the current Uchiha Uranium, who has no protection. Only Uchiha Uranium knows the pain he is suffering at this moment. Although he feels that he can completely absorb the energy of the mild radiation titan giant ape soul ring, his face changed after the continuous influx of energy, which seems to have no end. Swelling, incomparable swelling. He only felt that his whole body was inflated and suddenly increased in size. This feeling of being filled was very uncomfortable. The endless power had nowhere to vent. Although it would not hurt him, this action of sending food to the throat after eating was very uncomfortable for him. He couldn't spit out anything. This gentle but huge power would not hurt him, nor was it willing to leave his body. Now he could only rely on the transformation of his body to absorb all the power, otherwise he would easily explode and die. At this moment, the soul beast radiation soul power accumulated in his body began to interact with the soul ring soul power. This energy of his was absorbed autonomously, completely independent of his own soul power. Normally, it was balled into a black mist-like ball. Only when it was absorbed could it be transformed into real soul power bit by bit. But at this moment, the external soul ring energy continued to impact Uchiha Uranium's body and reach the black mist. In an instant, the two armies met. The two began to consume and purify each other frantically. On the one hand, the gentle soul ring energy consumed, eliminated the mixed radiation power, and guided it into pure soul power that was easier to absorb. On the other hand, this mixed radiation power also consumed the excessive soul ring energy, reducing the pressure in Uchiha Uranium's body. The energy of the two was so much that in this process of mutual consumption, Uchiha Uranium's swollen body began to gradually return to normal. There was too much energy. This consumption, which was no different from fighting, was enough to relieve his inflated body. If his body was not strong enough, he might have started to use blood at that time, instead of swelling up like a 200-pound fat man. Every time the bones made a sound, it meant that the soul ring energy accumulated in Uchiha Uranium was being absorbed by his body bit by bit. As one thing increased while the other decreased, this huge energy was also constantly weakened. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. As the sky gradually darkened, more than 3 hours passed. Finally, after Uchiha Uranium's body was enough to accommodate the energy of the 20,000-year soul ring, all the energy in his body, including the soul power of the soul beast, the energy of the soul ring, and his own soul power, began to compromise and began to absorb, transform, and merge with each other. The sound of the bone swelling stopped, and Uchiha Uranium's frown relaxed a little. A layer of light gray-black light began to quietly overflow from his body. Along with the release of the gray-black light, a mist of the same color began to appear out of thin air around Uchiha Uranium, carrying an amazing energy that made people's scalps numb. This mist composed of high-energy particles formed a ring, lingering around him, allowing him to be driven at will. At this time, the outer circle of gray-black mist wrapped around him quietly dissipated, and the energy fluctuations also stopped inadvertently, leaving only the silver-haired boy sitting in place, with a frank face and a frank body. At this moment, Uchiha Uranium's body exuded a faint gray light, which did not look like dirt. If you look at it under a microscope, the gray light is actually condensed high-energy particles, densely and evenly wrapped around his whole body, constantly moving, generating a large amount of energy. At first glance, it has a sense of magic. Uchiha Uranium was completely naked at this time, and his muscles became extremely obvious. Although they were not exaggerated muscles, his chest and abdominal muscles were clearly outlined. His originally tan skin now seemed to be 2 shades whiter, with a bright glow. After a moment, the boy opened his eyes, and a gleam of light flashed. The surrounding radiation field also became active again as the boy's consciousness awakened. It's done. Chapter 65, 10,000 Years Soul Skill, Nuclear Explosion Kick. Uchiha Uranium himself didn't know how he managed to survive. Endless energy filled his whole body, leaving no space. He only felt that in this extreme swelling, under the endless tsunami energy, he was like a small sampan in the waves, and he could be submerged under the next wave at any time, and he would never open his eyes again. He was not desperate, but just silently endured the continuous waves. No matter how big the ocean current was, he had to insist on floating on the water. After an unknown amount of time, suddenly, the nighttime turmoil-like ocean stopped the crazy behavior of the tsunami. As the sky cleared, the warm and comfortable sunshine sprinkled on his face, with a strong and gentle breath, making him unconsciously close his eyes, as if his soul was about to ascend to heaven and his bones were about to melt. After experiencing the storm for an unknown period of time, when he was extremely desperate and welcomed this kind of comfort, Uchiha Uranium finally fell into drowsy enjoyment. When he regained consciousness again, his eyes were hazy, as if covered by a layer of white gauze. All kinds of perceptions gradually returned to him. As his mind awakened, the scenery and the black night sky in Uchiha Uranium's perception gradually became clear. An indescribable sense of comfort spread throughout his body, and his bones were warm, as if he was lying on a Simmons mattress after soaking in a hot spring for an hour. He had no intention of moving at all, and just wanted to close his eyes and sleep in this gentle place. The smelly smell of soil gradually came from the surroundings, making Uchiha Uranium frown. The next moment, suddenly, he opened his eyes, and the hazy consciousness dissipated instantly. It's done. After muttering to himself, Uchiha Uranium began to try to move his body, and activated his martial soul, the radiation eye. After a moment, 4 bright soul rings rose slowly from bottom to top, 1 for 100 years, 2 for 1,000 years, and 1 for 20,000 years. The 4 soul rings rose and fell around Uchiha Uranium's body. As soon as the soul rings appeared, an invisible pressure suddenly appeared. At the same time, with the appearance of the soul ring on Uchiha-U's body, naturally, he exuded a tense feeling that made his scalp tingle. The invisible huge energy filled everything around him. As long as he wanted, this power could be used by him, whether it was defense or killing. Is this the feeling of a soul master? It's true. It's much stronger than before. Uchiha-U raised his hand to look at the skin color that had obviously changed, and then closed his eyes to carefully feel the power brought by the fourth black soul ring. For a moment, a heroic spirit surged in his chest, and he felt that he was omnipotent at this moment. Let's try it. How strong can this power be? With a light breath, Uchiha slowly stood up. He first moved his body. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound of firecrackers all over his body. The uninterrupted sound between his bones made him feel numb, and then a full sense of reality came, as if he was reborn again. Standing up straight, watching the black soul ring on Uchiha Uranium quietly light up, different from the gorgeous purple 1,000-year soul ring, the 10,000-year soul ring gives people a sense of calmness and restraint. On him, he felt a different look. As the soul ring flashed, whatever power around him began to gather on his body, on his right leg. At this time, Uchiha Uranium felt that among all these objects, he could clearly distinguish three types of energy for him to use. One is alpha energy, which is essentially a high-speed moving helium nucleus. If it is a dead object, the damage caused by the explosion is not very obvious, but it is also strong enough. Only after entering the human body will it cause great disturbance and destruction, causing extremely terrifying explosion damage. The second is beta energy, which is essentially a high-speed moving electron flow. Before directly entering the human body, it will cause a severe mental shock and interfere with the target's brain. After entering the human body, it will damage the cells in the surrounding wounds, causing great pain and torture, and it is easy to die. The third is gamma energy, which is an electromagnetic wave with strong penetrating power and a very short wavelength. After entering the human body, it will temporarily stop the body's functions, making it unable to move or resist. The duration is about 1 to 5 seconds, depending on the energy. However, due to its penetrating power, after hitting another creature, the radiation shock and gamma energy will continue to impact until the energy is exhausted or the next target is hit. The specific impact range is any target from 100 meters to 500 meters. These three energies are different, but they can be combined with each other, and because of the number of combinations, huge damage will be generated in geometric multiples. If the three are superimposed, and supplemented by the soul power on the body and other high-energy particles around, condensed on the feet, jumped high, and kicked at any place or person, an extremely terrifying explosion like a nuclear explosion will condense in the feet. The central temperature exceeds 100,000 degrees, followed by extremely explosive high radiation shock waves, electromagnetic pulses, radioactive dust, and a large-scale mushroom cloud. The reason why the temperature is not more than 100 million degrees Celsius, but only 100,000 degrees, is because at a higher temperature, the high-energy particles used for protection around the body cannot protect their own safety, and there is a risk of death under their own soul skills. Hiss. This soul skill is so terrifying. Uchiha Uranium gasped. Seeing this soul skill, I was so angry that I trembled all over. I was sweating all over and my hands and feet were cold in the hot weather. Can this soul skill be good? What kind of soul rings do we soul masters need to obtain to be considered normal? Tears flowed down my face uncontrollably. This world is full of nuclear pacification of Douluo Continent. When can a normal soul master like me really stand up? The continent is empty and the nuclear explosion is happening in the world. Uchiha Uranium stopped the idea of experimenting with a nuclear explosion kick, and his face was uncertain for a while. What does this soul skill mean? Once kicked out, is it possible that I will be vaporized? Is this really a soul skill, not a nuclear bomb? Can't I have some normal soul skills after absorbing soul rings beyond my level? Nuclear explosion kick? The latest novel is published on the 69th book bar. Damn. Why do I feel that the soul skills I have absorbed now are not normal? They are all like persecuting Douluo Continent. Every skill has terrifying radiation. Now the fourth soul skill has a nuclear explosion. Damn, the ninth soul skill will not blow up the continental shelf, right? Struggling, Uchiha Uranium looked around, then sighed, and thought helplessly, it seems that I will not use this soul skill in the future. I am really afraid that I will lose half my life if I kick it out. It is better to be like Sass in the future, with a sword to travel the world, and I am not afraid of the gods. After that, Uchiha Uranium sat down again, thinking, and set a goal for himself. Absorb all the radioactive soil, and then leave the Star Dou Forest. He has completely controlled the radiation and awakened the radiation field. Now he can go home. Father, mother, and brother. The last update is over. Don't say that I am short and slow to update. Obviously, I will update even if I don't sleep. I will do what I say in the 5th update. I believe you can believe me. Although I didn't update it before 12 o'clock, I have been working hard, so it's not too much to ask for a recommendation ticket or collection. You are welcome to give me a reward. There will be 3 updates as usual tonight. Chapter 66 10,000 Year Soul Bone. Now, give all your strength, Radiation Titan Ape. Turning his head, Uchiha Uranium looked at the corpse lying on the ground, his face indifferent, and the 3rd soul ring on his body flickered slowly, with a charm like flowing water, as natural as breathing. The next moment, a surging soul power wave rose from the body of the Radiation Titan Ape. The visible radiation energy soared into the sky, circling in the air like a giant snake, and then seemed to have found its target, circling down, and rushed straight towards Uchiha Uranium's body. The boy raised his right hand and stretched out to the almost solid radiation energy. Under the power of the radiation field, all the high-energy particles were like tamed sheep, and he was the emperor who dominated all of this. The huge soul power energy in front of him did not directly enter his body like the previous soul ring energy, but was absorbed into his body by him, turning into condensed mist, slowly rotating in his spiritual world, waiting for him to absorb it. This power is not bad, worthy of the size of eating all the radioactive creatures. Closing his eyes, Uchiha Uranium carefully felt the surging soul power fluctuations in his body, but suddenly, a wave of energy came from the body of the radioactive Titan Ape, with a breath like life, constantly flashing. As if on a whim, the boy moved his eyes horizontally and placed them on the body of the monster. There is a soul power fluctuation, and it is not weak. Following this special fluctuation, Uchiha Uranium immediately became interested, stood up, and walked towards the body of the giant beast, constantly changing directions to sense where it was. With a sound of leather tearing, Uchiha Uranium stood in front of an arm, stretched out his hand like a knife, cut open the rotten flesh, and tore off the softened muscles with a strong stench along the veins, and kept stretching his arm and trying to touch something. But it was too big, and the arm was as thick as 3 of its people. It was impossible to take out the things inside by itself, and it needed to go deeper. Let me see what it is it a soul bone? With curiosity, the soul power on Uchiha Uranium's body flashed, and under his control, a pair of gray gloves gradually took shape on his hands. It was the radiation energy around him, countless high-energy particles. At this moment, he was actually changing the order of arrangement in his hands, as if an invisible body was wrapped around him. If any attack attempted to harm his body, it would first pass through the wall composed of high-energy particles to block it, otherwise, it would be an invalid attack. The next moment, his hands touched the gradually softening and smelly flesh, and the sound of tearing a piece of cloth kept coming, sharper than a razor. The high-speed moving energy was arranged in the way Uchiha Uranium thought, and it was easy to tear apart and discard all the lifeless rotten flesh, continuously going deeper, until a gray black arm bone appeared in front of him. The size had condensed from nearly 7 meters to the size of an ordinary person. Lying quietly in the flesh, the soul power slowly beat, with a rhythm of breathing, emitting a faint black light. It's a soul bone. The left arm bone. Uchiha Uranium was pleasantly surprised, with a look of joy on his face, and hurriedly took it into his hand. As his hand touched the soul bone, suddenly, as if they had a telepathic connection, in his subconscious, the auras of the two gradually merged into one. Although the arm bone has not yet been integrated, this feeling of tameness made Uchiha Uranium realize that this arm bone was destined for him. Haha, it's really a soul bone, and it fits me very well. This arm bone born from a radiation monster has the same aura as mine. With a loud laugh, Uchiha Uranium took out the soul bone, walked to the outside world, and opened the radiation eye in the moonlight to observe it carefully. This is the left arm bone of a 20,000-year-old soul beast. He could feel in his intuition that this was the soul bone that best fit him. Even in the future, any soul bone produced from other soul beasts would not be as good as this soul bone produced from the radiation beast, and this degree of fit was precisely because he completely awakened the radiation field when he opened the 3rd Magatama. He is the source of these energies, he is the emperor among them. All the radiation energy comes from his body, from the power in his eyes. How can a minister not bow when he meets the emperor? So that's how it is. The reason why I became a high-concentration radiation source after awakening the radiation eye is because I didn't open the 3rd Magatama and couldn't completely control it. This is the power of the unformed domain. After a moment of silence, Uchiha Uranium has already reversed the results and guessed, thinking about the reasons for everything that happened to him. Maybe the reason why he could initially sense the radiation range when he had the second soul ring was not because of the increase in soul power level, but because he opened the second Magatama at that time, and thus awakened the elemental pupils that came with the radiation eye. But what about the short-term control brought by the third soul ring? Is it possible that as the soul power level increases, at a certain stage, in addition to opening the domain through Magatama, it can also be opened by reaching a certain soul power level? The radiation eye spirit is so powerful. When the spirit awakens, it actually carries the power of a domain. You have to know that only Tang San's mother, as a spirit beast, passed on this domain to Tang San, and it can only be controlled after the bloodline is fully awakened. My domain is obviously more powerful. The power of radiation is so terrifying. Looking at the spirit bone in his hand, Uchiha Uranium's thoughts gradually diverged, from spirit rings to spirit bones, to domains, and other people's domains. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. To be honest, as an ordinary college student on the Blue Star in his previous life, although he often watched anime and novels, he was not particularly good at thinking about it, nor would he read the whole book. For example, although he didn't finish watching the whole show of Naruto, he could understand it by reading fan fiction. The same is true for Douluo. After seeing Xiao Wu's death and Tang San's battle with the Soul Saint, he never watched it again. In fact, he only learned from other information that Xiao Wu was resurrected, Tang San became a god, and then ascended. That's right, there's only this little information, and he doesn't know anything else. He doesn't even know who Tang San's opponent is. I heard that the Spirit Hall has a final boss, the 99th level Jin Daoliu. Did Jin Daoliu become a god and was defeated by Tang San? Or was it the Pope, who was called Dong Lai? There were more and more mixed thoughts in his mind. Uchiha Uranium shook his head and emptied his mind, forcing himself not to continue thinking about these things. Since there is already a soul bone, the top priority is to absorb it and further enhance his strength. The next schedule has been determined. First, absorb all the radiation land and restore the original appearance of the Star Dou Forest. Then find a chance to say goodbye to Xiao Wu. Of course, it doesn't matter if she is not there. Finally, leave the forest and go home. 6 years ago, he felt a connection between his blood, as if there was telepathy between brothers. He seemed to be able to feel that a weak little guy appeared in his life. Moreover, it was a boy. Chapter 67 Time Stop Left Arm Bone. Time waits for no one. Uchiha Uranium immediately took the gray-black left arm bone and sat down on the spot, closed his eyes, felt the soul power in his body, and mobilized the soul power to contact the soul bone. It can be clearly seen that under the action of his soul power, this left arm bone began to melt rapidly, condensed into a massive black gelatinous substance, and slowly seeped into his arm. This gelatinous substance looked a bit creepy, like poison, emitting a slight stench, but after contacting Uchiha Uranium's body, a trace of black quickly dissipated, leaving only a tiny fragrance. It was like a pink rice cake emitting a faint heat. The black gelatinous soul bone was completely immersed in the body bit by bit. The next moment, Uchiha Uranium felt that a warm heat appeared on the entire left arm, which seemed to be real, but also seemed to be extremely illusory. Starting from the fingertips, this heat flowed all the way along the meridians to the arm, and then flowed back again, from the arm to the fingertips. The heat was very comfortable, a bit like the fish therapy, when the fish gently pecked at the skin. The itchy, warm and soft feeling filled every blood vessel in the arm, and the soul power of the whole body began to unconsciously operate, intervening in the soul bone, trying to merge with it. The power in the body was very gentle, without any riot or action to destroy the body. Apart from some warm itching, there was no special feeling. Perhaps if it were another person, it would not be the case. This soul bone composed of fission nuclei that were squeezed into a ball and constantly collided in a small area, and an area was similar to the principle of nuclear bombs to some extent, except that Uchiha Uranium happened to have the ability to absorb it without loss. Others might die on the spot. Because the energy released by this nuclear fission is far beyond the ability of soul masters of level 30, 40, or even 50 or 60 to resist. The black gelatinous soul bone is gradually merging with Uchiha Uranium's left arm bone. It slowly penetrates deeply, and the energy contained in it begins to transform continuously, strengthening Uchiha Uranium's left arm. The huge energy was slightly hot. Suddenly, As most of the soul bone was absorbed into the body, the bones of Uchiha Uranium's left arm gradually began to be rendered with a layer of light gray, and some fine textures appeared on the surface of the bones. The bones began to grow slightly larger, but not obviously. The surrounding muscles began to wriggle and change constantly. The power contained in the soul bone was gradually compressed in the bones, and then gradually took shape. The unprecedented sense of power gradually merged into Uchiha Uranium's consciousness with this change. Although he could not move when absorbing, at this moment, as this abundant energy surged in his body, he only felt that he was omnipotent. Time passed by minute, and the sky gradually brightened. The whole night was spent unconsciously, and the soul power fluctuations on Uchiha Uranium became more and more obvious. The explosive energy filled the surroundings, and the gray-white mist rose up, as if cultivating immortals, with a dreamlike feeling. Suddenly, Uchiha Uranium's eyes suddenly opened, and then a low roar came out of the boy's mouth. His left arm suddenly raised, and with a boom, the space around him suddenly shook. The space seemed to be distorted and rippled at this moment, but the next moment, it suddenly disappeared. Uchiha Uranium slowly turned his head and looked at the sky, feeling a little cold in his heart. It's not disappearing, it's frozen. Under the superb vision of the radiation eye, the tiny dust suddenly stopped in the air, without falling or floating. Pause time. 2 seconds later, accompanied by a burst of dense light sounds in the air, some of which were similar to the light sound of a broken mirror, the dust moved again and slowly rose. It seemed that this time pause could only last for 2 seconds, and after 2 seconds, it would return to its original state again. At this moment, Uchiha Uranium's left hand suddenly extended a gray light. This gray light was about 2 feet long and about 2 fingers wide, like a blade, and the gray light was rippling like water waves. The moment it appeared, the air unconsciously whistled slightly. Uchiha Uranium's left hand was completely wrapped in gray light. After extending from the finger bones, he felt that the blade was like an extension of his arm, extremely smooth. Then, the gray light dissipated, and a wave of soul power surged from his left palm in the opposite direction, along his left arm, and in an instant it had spread throughout his body. It seemed that Uchiha Uranium was baptized by this layer of white-gray light. Uchiha Uranium also took a long breath at this moment, and the pattern of the 3 Megadama radiation eye slowly rotated in the pupil, and a flash of light flashed by. After a long breath, Uchiha Uranium's body shook slightly, and then put his hands on the ground, supporting him to stand up. His body stood up again, and the gray light also emerged as he stood up. Boom! The next moment, a shockwave-like wave exploded from Uchiha Uranium's body, just like plowing the land. There was no more radioactive dust around the boy, and it scattered. The surroundings were instantly cleared, revealing the black ground. In the shock wave, there was a faint flash of black light, which vaguely indicated that the shock wave was not as mediocre as it seemed. Success. Uchiha Uranium's mouth corners raised slightly, revealing a smile, trying to express his excitement and happiness. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. But after the smile appeared, Uchiha Uranium could no longer suppress his happiness. He raised his head and closed his eyes, facing the rising sun, and laughed wantonly. The sound echoed in this open space and kept floating. Slowly, Uchiha Uranium put away his exaggerated smile, his face was calm, and he returned to his previous expression. His stern face showed no emotion, and his calm eyes revealed only a faint cold light. An inexplicable momentum gradually flowed through Uchiha Uranium. So this is the power controlled by the radiation titanate just now? The power of time suspension. In an instant, everything around it stopped for 2 seconds, and this is only the level of a 20,000-year-old soul beast. I remember that soul bones can be upgraded with a level of soul masters, so can the power of time suspension continue to increase? Uchiha Uranium concentrated on thinking. 2 seconds is not long, but it is not short either. A 2-second advantage in the battle is enough for him to defeat any opponent with a small difference in strength in an instant. With his soul bone, as long as he does not die halfway, he can even dominate the world. Once the soul bone skill is activated, he can launch a surprise attack that will kill him, and any enemy who wants to kill him will kneel down under this skill. This is simply ha-ha-ha. Uchiha Uranium laughed wildly again, his face was ferocious, and his eyes flashed with unparalleled confidence. For many years, except for seeing Xiao Wu and a few humans who wanted to kill him but were killed instead, he never said a word to anyone. Unconsciously, Like the Uchiha in Naruto, like Itachi, Sasuke, Shisu, Madara and other people, his spirit has also changed a little. Only such people can truly awaken the supreme power belonging to Uchiha. Main Gekyo. Zha Waludo. There are 4 more chapters today, don't worry. Note that Uranium, this silly boy, only wants to obtain the strongest power. He has been trapped in death 3 times, which makes him extremely resistant to this kind of death. If he can stand on the top of the world, then no one can kill him. Please don't understand him as a fool or a psychopath at present. Well, Uchiha are all psychopaths, so you can understand it this way. Chapter 68 Uchiha Family. At night. As Uchiha Uranium walked in the dark forest, the martial spirit in his eyes turned, and the high-energy particles in the surrounding radiation area began to detach from the soil in an orderly manner, and all sank into the boy's body. As long as he walked on this land, these radiation energies from his body would return to his body by themselves, without him even having to take any action, or use the spirit ring, and the land would be gradually absorbed back to normal. He has completely mastered this power, and now he is qualified to return to his family without letting these radiation powers harm his family. Under the control of his radiation eyes, these radiation energies can be freely released and retracted, no matter where they gather, or all return to his body. He can do it easily. In other words, even if he returns to normal human society, he can still live a normal life. Even if the second spirit skill, extreme nuclear energy reaction is used, and nuclear fission radiation is carried out in a large area around, he can control it, such as only amplifying it, and not letting these things hurt others. And tonight is the last section of the road, the lake and the forest. The bright moonlight shines down, and the forest at night is quiet. Through the gaps between the leaves, you can see a bright moon hanging in the night sky. The boy walked alone in the forest. There was nothing in the darkness of the forest, no life, and no soul beasts. This is the source of radiation. It is thought that except for the radiation titan ape, no creatures will survive here, unless the radiation titan ape cannot be defeated. But this is impossible. If there is such a powerful guy, he would have encountered it long ago, and he would like to tear him to pieces and eat him. Moreover, he is not afraid of any radiation soul beast at all at present. He even expects these brainless guys to send energy up by themselves so that he will not be difficult to find. In his walking route, you can see that like a forked river merging, countless radiation energies form a gray river flow, leaving from the soil, air, plants, and rocks, and spontaneously entering Uchiha Uranium's body. The originally dry land gradually has other colors besides black, and although plants cannot be resurrected, one day, this land that has been favored by radiation will have a second time to bloom with life. The radiation area of Uchiha Uranium is not very large, with a radius of only about 100 meters, which is nothing for this overly wide radiation area, but he has no choice. Although he is fast at weeding, he can't stand the vast area. At present, the radiation absorbed by Uchiha Uranium cannot improve his soul power, but there is a 20,000-year-old radiation titan giant ape soul in his body, which has not been digested yet, still lying quietly in the black mist, waiting for the fate of being assimilated. Now Uchiha Uranium feels that he should be around level 42. Without the soul power test, he can't sense how strong he is, but when absorbing the soul ring, he can feel that the soul power in the previous battle has disappeared, and it must have been absorbed into the body. And when he absorbs the soul power of the radiation titan giant ape, this level may rise again, but he doesn't know to what level. Walking at night, Uchiha Uranium began to think about what to do after he gets out. In his mind, he flashed the scene of the conversation with his father in the family. The family is a secluded family, and should be in an unknown forest. Anyway, it has been like this since he can remember, but his father never lets him go out, as if the outside world is another world. The family's residence is vast, completely closed and self-sufficient. The family members will basically not leave the family except to go out to obtain spirit rings, and the news on the Douluo Continent is generally brought back by the family members. Before the age of 6, Uchiha Uranium once asked his father in the family, why everyone is so strong. There are several titled Douluo, why don't they go out? Nesting in a remote place, preparing all the clothes and food by yourself, except for limited communication with the mainland, completely out of touch with the times. Do we have any enemies? He still remembers that his father's face was a little grim at the time, and continued, I will take you out when I get the spirit ring in the future, and you can also go to the village and the city to play and see. But you can't use the martial spirit. The family is not restricting freedom, but protection. Uranium, you will understand in the future. Then he smiled and poked his forehead. Uchiha Uranium didn't understand. Hiding in this place, is there really any enemy, and it is very powerful? In the entire Douluo Continent, who could threaten a top family with more than 5 titled Douluo to the point that they dare not leave the sect? Suddenly, Uchiha Uranus thought of a name. Spirit Hall. So he asked his father the next sentence. Father, is the enemy of the family the Spirit Hall? I remember that in the sect information I have read, only the top 3 sects can compete with us Uchiha, and they may be even worse than us. After that, the father shook his head and whispered to Uchiha, the enemies of the family are all the spirit masters in the entire Douluo Continent. Son, remember, our martial souls can be dug out. This was said by the ancestor of the Uchiha at that time, but this is still a hidden danger of the martial soul. Unlike other martial souls of eyes, hands, or hair and ears, our Sharingan martial soul is born from ancestors of unknown origins, and no matter who the clan members combine to have children, the resulting martial souls are almost all Sharingan, because the bloodline is too powerful, causing any martial soul to succumb to the power of Sharingan, without exception. Uchiha looked around and continued. Although the clan members still retain a certain amount of strength after the Sharingan was dug out, they no longer have the previous strength. This is the real reason why I don't let you reveal your martial spirit, but you don't have to worry too much, because there is only one person in history who knows this secret. He was a close friend of a certain clan leader. Before his death, he was asked by the clan leader to inherit his last wish. That ancestor was eventually buried in the family cemetery. After saying that, his father took out a book from the bookshelf and threw it to him, asking him to continue reading and studying. That's right, with the strength of the family, it is impossible for anyone to be a rival. It may be just like a hero, who gained close friends and then entrusted his strength. Then the family immediately retired when they saw that something was wrong. But what Uchiha Uranium is most worried about now is that he knows that the family is in a forest in the Tendao Empire, but he doesn't know which forest it is. Maybe it's still unknown whether it is in the forest. When he gets out, how will he get home? The latest novel is published on 69 Shuba. And there are some important things. He can't never use his martial spirit. Once he uses it, the changes in his eyes will definitely have an impact. Moreover, his 4th spirit ring is of the 10,000-year level, which can be said to have broken the history of Douluo Continent. In this case, someone will definitely come to attack him and find out why he can get this spirit ring. You must know that Tang-san encountered an attack from a titled Douluo when he got his 4th 10,000-year spirit ring. And the family can't know his position quickly. After leaving the family for 7 years, unless he claims to be Uchiha Uranium, he must find a place to stay by himself. Since he has to act outside, necessary cover is indispensable, such as changing his name, mask, hood, cloak, etc. Anyway, no matter how talented he pretends to be, he can't let others know the name of Uchiha. No one can do it. Moreover, Uchiha Uranium was confident that this action would not be discovered. Regardless of the appearance of the radiation eye, which was different from the Sharingan, the more important point was that all members of the Uchiha clan had black hair, while he had silver hair. So who could possibly know about the family? Suddenly, Uchiha Uranium thought of a person. Uchiha Gang. But he couldn't go to Uchiha Gang, who was known as a master, because the two were not familiar with each other and it would be easy to expose his identity during the conversation. Otherwise, he could only change his way to make himself famous and let the family realize his existence. Uranium, silver white hair, special eye martial spirit, these characteristics will definitely make his father aware of it. Otherwise, it would be very dangerous to rely on himself alone. If you want to become famous, then go to the Soul Master competition. The next moment, Uchiha Uranium's eyes lit up. Soul bones can evolve, but everyone only saw Tang-san's external soul bones, so they think that ordinary soul bones cannot evolve. But the original master said in the chapter 38 external soul bones, that soul bones can evolve with the soul master's opportunity, but it is not an ordinary soul power improvement. It requires a genius treasure like Tang-san or a special soul ring. So don't worry about whether it is my own setting. I must have considered it before writing it. After all, it is a fan work, and rigor is always good. How to say it, the ancestor is an outsider, and being able to mutate the Sharingan into a martial spirit is already a shocking act. Although Tang-san is also a time traveler, He is a soul traveler after all, but our ancestor is a physical traveler, so terrifying. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Star Empire. Xingluo Empire, Malzahar Principality, Tikrizo Town, located at the junction of Xingdao Great Forest and Xingluo Empire, close to Longsing City, and only a few hundred kilometers from the border of the two empires. It is called a principality, but in fact it has evolved from a province, and its area is only as large as Taiwan in Uchiha Uranium's previous life. It belongs to Xingluo Empire and is one of the 6 principalities within the Xingluo Empire. The current king's surname is Dai. On the surface, it is an independent principality, but no one knows whether it is actually an independent principality. The north of Malzahar Principality directly borders the border of Sharingan Empire. Therefore, in the Xingluo Empire, the military forces stationed around the Malzahar Kingdom have always been the top priority of all the nobles of the Xingluo Empire. Even the king's surname is Dai, which is also considered by the current king of the Xingluo Empire. After all, behind the border is this principality. Once the whole country surrenders to Sharingan and sneak attacks the border guards from behind, then everything in the Xingluo Empire will be open to Sharingan. The Xingluo Empire originally had 12 provinces, but 6 of them were divided into 6 factions. The empire itself directly controlled 6 provinces, and the 6 principalities controlled 1 each. On the surface, the 6 principalities were all ruled by the Xingluo Empire, but in fact, these 6 countries had already become countries within countries. Apart from the necessary tribute, everything was completely autonomous. If the empire itself was not extremely powerful, and it was not quietly taking action to regain control of the empire in secret, perhaps civil unrest would have occurred long ago. But the good news is that one principality has been subtly transformed, and that is the Malzahar Kingdom closest to the border. Otherwise, with this hidden danger, the king of the Xingluo Empire would probably not be able to sleep peacefully. The town of Tikrizo is located closest to the Xingdao Great Forest, surrounded by large and small villages, and the town is heavily guarded, and there are even high-level soul masters stationed here to prevent soul beasts from appearing in the Xingdao Forest and harming the town. It was just past noon, the sun was scorching, and in a small village called No Village, a figure took advantage of the villagers busy farming and began to move quietly. This one won't do. It's too big. I can't wear it. This one? Damn, it stinks. Inside the house, a figure was constantly rummaging through the villagers' clothes, picking and choosing, like an underwear thief, which was disgusting. This one fits, but it seems that I haven't worn it many times. Could it be specially reserved for festive occasions? Oh, never mind, I'll change it first. In the shadows, a figure kept making rustling sounds in the house, and then he put on his clothes, walked out, and revealed his face. Uchiha Uranium. In the forest, his clothes had long been destroyed, and even his soul guide was burned in the extremely terrifying eye rays. In other words, he was always naked during the time he was in the forest, and he didn't even have the soul beast fur to use. It was not until he wandered around for more than a month and left the forest that he discovered that there were villages around. This was incredible, so he immediately took action to steal clothes, and the scene happened. No, I stole someone's clothes and pants to wear, which is very wrong. What should I do? How can I compensate? Uchiha Uranium held the doorframe and took back the steps he had just taken. His brows were slightly frowned. For a moment, his mind was thinking quickly, thinking about what kind of compensation he could get. I got it. Suddenly, Uchiha Uranium thought of a certain point. In front of him was the Star Dou Great Forest. Going to get some soul beast meat should be extremely rich for ordinary villagers, or something of great value, at least much more valuable than this set of clothes. Then, Uchiha Uranium moved, his figure moved instantly, and when he flashed out of the house, he also closed the door. After a few jumps, he entered the Star Dou Great Forest. Since he can control the radiation field normally, he can turn on or off these radiation energies at any time. After all, before he controlled the field, the reason why these radiation energies were emitted was because he did not control them enough. Now it is different. In order to kill a qualified soul beast, if the breath is emitted, naturally there will be nothing. After closing the field, the forest was completely different from the world that Uchiha Uranium had seen before. There were roars of soul beasts around, various noises in the forest, and birds chirping. At this moment, in Uchiha Uranium's eyes, it was a real forest with life, not the dead and boring world as before. Start working. Uchiha Uranium rubbed his hands together, and the radiation eye martial spirit quietly opened. He jumped to the tree and looked down at the surroundings. The colorful flowers, leaves and grass came into view, giving Uchiha Uranium a completely different feeling. There were many soul beasts, but all the ones around were 10 years old, or even less than 10 years old. Uchiha Uranium's target was not these. At least 100-year soul beast was valuable to him. The next moment, he moved, like a phantom in the forest, or like a ghost that kept flashing, jumping and running, and moving towards the inside of the forest again. This time, he was no longer trying to avoid his own flaws, but for the future. Not long after, a 100-year-old porcupine was held upside down in his hand and kept moving towards the outside world. The latest novel is published on 69shu.com. Now, only soul beasts over 10,000 years old can threaten him. The increase of 3 Magatama is not just as simple as it is now. Each increase of Magatama will bring a strong physique, strength, speed increase, and a skill different from soul skills. Whether it is high-speed dynamic vision that is higher than dynamic vision, or the power to control people's hearts, or the ability to control the body with incomparable precision, no matter what it is, it will widen the gap between Uchiha and other soul masters. Whether it is the Haoshin Hammer of the Haoshin sect or the dragonization of the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus sect, they cannot compare with Uchiha, not to mention Uchiha's supreme power, the Mangekyou Sharingan, and various secret eye techniques. Although he is now at level 40 in soul power, with the enhancement of nuclear cells, 3 Magatama, 10,000-year soul rings, and soul bones, ordinary soul saints do not have such a strong body as him, let alone those of the same level. Soon, after placing the soul beast corpse at the door and writing some words with charcoal, Uchiha Uranium left this place in an instant to avoid meeting the original owner. If the other party did not want it and insisted on taking the clothes, he would be embarrassed. Following the stone road, Uchiha Uranium headed in this direction. His soul power appeared, and began to speed up to leave. He did not have much money on him, and he would definitely not touch the money saved by ordinary villagers. Even this piece of clothing had embarrassed him beyond measure. If it was not for the 1,000-year soul beast to go deeper and difficult to find, it would probably not be this 700-year-old porcupine. Chapter 70 Evil Spirit Master. The journey was long and the weather was hot. Uchiha Uranium didn't know how many times he had wiped his sweat. Although this kind of light radiation was within his control, the temperature was not. Controlling energy was equal to controlling everything, but in the current situation, it was not applicable, which made him quite annoyed. I hate summer. Cursing inwardly, Uchiha Uranium once again looked at the road in front of him. The sun was blazing, and one could even see the distorted light on the ground constantly refracting, emitting dazzling light. There were roads all around, and the woods were even a little far away. Judging from the situation, it should have been specially built, and the surrounding trees were cut down, and some stones were laid, just as a continent. For Uchiha Uranium, this was quite novel. To get rich, one must first build roads. The people of this country have some ideas. Although this kind of road is very simple, it is not as easy to operate as one might think. The boy was also a Chinese in his previous life, so he naturally knew that once this kind of road was opened, information would be directly passed. If he were to be the emperor, he would definitely continue to cultivate the transit station, and then the newspapers would be circulated, funded by the empire, and published every day to praise the emperor, sing praises to his majesty, or what good things the emperor did in some place, and even bless the people. These would be delivered to various villages and towns on a regular basis every day. Under this operation, would he still worry about the instability of the people's hearts in the empire? He even thought of more things. The emperor is the emperor, the master of a country, and the people's hearts are the real authority. What kind of cards are those Shayan Dalxinglo playing in the original book? A good hand of cards is played badly. Half of the countries are independent, and the empire is in name only. Compared with Europe in the previous life, this seems to make some sense. But if you look at China, you will feel that the emperor is really incompetent. Suddenly, a faint smell of blood blew along the breeze and was smelled by Uchiha Uranium. Unlike the bloody smell of soul beasts, This sudden smell was actually slightly sweet and fishy, which made him a little stunned. What's going on? Uchiha Uranium stopped running and followed his feeling, casting his eyes on the stone fork road extending to the side. It seemed that he could see a series of houses in the distance, which should be a village. Do you want to go over and take a look? It's noon, just in time to find something to eat. After hesitating for a moment, Uchiha Uranium decided to leave. After all, he was a soul master and could catch soul beasts as collateral. He was not afraid of not being able to afford food. Although he had no money, it did not mean that he had no ability to obtain money. It was easy to catch a soul beast. With the idea determined, Uchiha Uranium set off, tapping the ground with his toes, and rushing towards the target with the sound of whistling wind. If he went too late, it would be too late. After a moment, Uchiha Uranium stopped and stared at the village in front of him without any smoke. He was stunned for a moment. What? Did they all finish eating and turn off the fire? No. The smell of blood is even stronger. The next moment, Uchiha Uranium frowned and looked at the deserted village. It should have been noon, but there was no sign of human habitation, not even a trace of living people. It was dead silent, like a dead prison. The martial spirit radiation eye opened, and the elemental pupil appeared. The black and yellow pupils were inexplicably intimidating, and the black light flowed, sweeping towards the village. In an instant, Uchiha Uranium's face turned ashen. They're all dead. Who did it? Everyone in the village is dead. Ah! Suddenly, a horrified scream came from the forest next to it, and after a breath, there was no sound at all. There are still people in the forest. The pupils swept over, and the elemental pupils passed through the black and white plants and rocks, and saw several living figures in the forest, and one of them was so black that it turned purple, with a strong murderous aura. The next moment, Uchiha Uranium ignored everything and activated the second soul skill, the extreme nuclear energy reaction. His figure instantly turned into an afterimage, and his figure was like a ghost. In an instant, he crossed a distance of nearly 50 meters, rose and fell in the woods, and rushed to the scene of the incident. Help! Don't come over here. With a splash of blood, the fresh life in Uchiha Uranium's eyes became less and less, until there was no life at all. Except for the murderer who stood there and stayed alone, there was no life at all. In an instant, Uchiha Uranium came to the vicinity of the battlefield. Thick blood and minced meat splashed everywhere, like a slaughterhouse. With a strong sense of discomfort, Uchiha Uranium's face changed, and anger rose in his heart. He looked at the murderer who was still staying here. Who are you? Why? The murderer in front of him was a teenager with a childish face. He didn't look much different in age from Uchiha Uranium, but at this moment, the eyes of this purple-haired boy revealed endless murderous intent and madness. Uchiha Uranium did not take the initiative. Although the boy in front of him killed many people, what if he was a tragic boy who came for revenge because his family was killed or for other reasons? Although this behavior is very disgusting, if it were him, he would probably do the same thing, but if he met a righteous person, he might not survive a day. He, the purple-haired boy, did not answer, but smiled strangely. His ferocious face was distorted again, like a devil, with a strange and terrifying smile, and his eyes were scattered, but when his eyes moved to Uchiha Uranium, they focused again, and the malice in his eyes suddenly increased, with a disgusting taste of killing. The next moment, without any words, the purple-haired boy suddenly disappeared, and even Uchiha Uranium's eyes flashed a residual image. This speed made him stunned, and then a claw shadow slashed at Uchiha Uranium from top to bottom. The latest novels are published on 69 Shuba. Swish. The purple-haired boy is fast, but Uchiha Uranium is even faster. Uchiha Uranium moved in an instant and appeared in the distance again. He frowned and looked at the boy standing in the same place as him, as well as the one yellow and 3 purple soul rings on his body. He was a little absent-minded for a while. So young, and already has 4 rings. But after he put his eyes on the martial spirit behind him, his eyes gradually became a little serious. A soul beast that looks like a brain. Uchiha Uranium looked around and saw that the heads of the ordinary villagers who fell to the ground around him were all opened with holes, and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Evil Soul Master. Evil Soul Master who cultivates with human lives. Without hesitation or conversation, Uchiha Uranium's martial spirit was fully activated, and 4 soul rings, 1 yellow, 2 purple and 1 black, flashed. His body was covered with a grayish-white halo that kept flowing through his body. Then, with his hand as a blade, he jumped and slashed directly at the Evil Soul Master. For this kind of evil soul master who practices killing people and even targets him, he will not let any of them go, and he will kill them directly. Die? There is one more update. I am not sleepy at all after drinking coffee. Although I have to go to work tomorrow, the words I say are like something I have pooped out. I can't eat it back, right? Don't worry, it will definitely be updated. Chapter 71, Nuclear Explosion Will Send You to Hell. Ling. The palm chopped over, but it hit something very hard, and there were bursts of light sounds, and Uchiha Uranium also felt a pain in his hand. At some point, the arm used by the purple-haired evil soul master in front of him to resist turned into a shining silver arm, emitting a chill, but it looked like stainless steel, and it looked like it had a good defensive power. Although the arm had cracks where Uchiha Uranium's hand knife had been hit, he was particularly unaware of it, and even licked his tongue, and the third soul ring on his body was pulsating. The next moment, Uchiha Uranium decisively jumped away, avoiding the sudden burst of sharp spikes that suddenly appeared from the purple-haired evil soul master's hand, and then the evil soul master raised the corners of his mouth and smiled, as if Uchiha Uranium in front of him was an extremely delicious food. And his eyes were indeed staring at Uchiha Uranium's face. No, to be more precise, it was his brain. Kill. The evil soul master had a ferocious look on his face, as if the delicious brain in front of him was all he had. He didn't consider that the opponent was much stronger than him, and didn't even see that his fourth soul ring was black, which was completely out of the normal soul ring configuration. You guy. You've eaten yourself stupid by eating brains. Uchiha Uranium was shocked and angry when he saw that this person dared to rush over, and didn't wait to run, but actually sent himself to death. He didn't waste time talking to the evil soul master. Now when he thought of the villagers who died tragically, a fire was burning in his heart. Evil soul master, he actually encountered such a thing. When the purple-haired evil soul master got close, Uchiha Uranium moved. As if teleporting, he suddenly appeared beside the evil soul master and avoided the punch. Then, after seeing the soul ring on his body flashing, he kicked him hard with his left leg, kicked him in the waist, and kicked him more than 10 meters away, and the evil soul master's soul skills suddenly descended. Countless purple lights shot out from him more than 3 meters away, and all the objects around him were penetrated, with extremely strong corrosion. The stones that were shot through were suddenly ironed with a layer of light purple, emitting an unclean light. Why are the skills of evil soul masters so evil? Uchiha Uranium frowned. He had never fought with evil soul masters, but this kind of evil soul skills would cause great losses if he was not careful. He had not watched Douluo much, but he also knew how much evil soul masters were hated in the Douluo series. And he was the same. But now, the evil soul master in front of him still had a fourth ring soul skill that he had not used. What if it was an instant one? Wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? It was a pity. If the dagger was still there, it would be much easier for him to nail it directly to the tree. Should I turn on the radiation? Forget it. I will use the fourth soul ring to pollute my particles with radiation. Anyway, there are no living things around. I will cremate these corpses to prevent them from being eaten. As his mind was running, Uchiha Uranium decided on the next idea. That's right, radiation kills people because high-energy particles release energy, but the energy is too great for humans to bear. If he uses radiation to kill this evil soul master, the high-energy particles will still return to his body, and he doesn't want to dirty his hands with this guy who exudes evil and disgusting from the inside out. Kill. Kill. With a low howl, the purple-haired evil soul master rushed forward again, with a flashing yellow soul ring. His whole body instantly became like silver, emitting dazzling reflections, just like an Iron Man, which is very difficult to deal with. But Uchiha Uranium doesn't reason with you. Huh? Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Uranium's eyes became sharp. Looking at the evil soul master who was seeking his own death in front of him, I don't know why, a kind of sympathetic thought came into his heart. I wonder what it feels like for you to feel the high temperature? The next moment, Uchiha Uranium jumped high. Gray high-energy particles hovered under his feet, as if there was an invisible force supporting him. When flying, Uchiha Uranium thought a lot, whether it would hurt him, or other miscellaneous thoughts. But after seeing the energy visible to the naked eye on his body, he couldn't help but feel relieved. That's right, the radiation field is his protection. It can absorb all radiation, impact, and high temperature, because radiation is the source of energy for all things. The sun is radiation, The air is radiation, and everything is under my control. The fourth soul skill, the black soul ring, suddenly flashed. A majestic force suddenly condensed under his feet. Invisibly, all the high energy particles, radiation energy, and all the soul power in Uchiha Uranium's body were absorbed by the soul skills contained under his feet. Extremely terrifying soul power fluctuations were instantly generated, and under the control of the boy, they did not explode immediately, but condensed in his feet. After a breath, Uchiha Uranium in the air carried the soul power fluctuations that oppressed the space. The whistling wind pressure flattened all the plants around him, like a tsunami. The overwhelming momentum actually formed a terrifying explosion sound with the surrounding space. At this moment, with the emergence of soul skills, the surrounding space seemed to be distorted. The invisible light suddenly dimmed. The woods not far from the village actually formed a sharp contrast with the rest of the outside world. This feeling of the sky falling directly stunned the purple-haired evil soul master. In the blink of an eye, Uchiha Uranium's kick, which contained a frightening force and carried the momentum of kneeling down to the heavens, whistled the wind, tore the air, and touched the face of the stunned evil soul master. Nuclear explosion. Kick. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. Exclamation mark. At this moment, time seemed to freeze. Uchiha Uranium felt his heart tremble. When he kicked out at this moment, his heart suddenly shook, as if he was reluctant to leave, and as if he had regrets. It seemed to last for a century, and it seemed like the passage of time bit by bit. This kick seemed to have crossed endless years, and finally began to bloom with endless light. Boom. A rising sun slowly rose under his feet. Endless temperature. Endless heat. Unparalleled impact. The high temperature of more than 100,000 degrees melted everything around. Uchiha Uranium could not hear any sound in his ears, and there was nothing in his eyes except white light. He could not even feel whether he had kicked the evil soul master, who was hated by both humans and gods. He only had one feeling: explosion. Boom. The next moment, as if it was an implosion, a harsh sound rang in his ears. The sharp roar completely made Uchiha Uranium lose his direction. The super-violent shock wave surged out from the ring to the surroundings, with endless potential energy to crush all the plants that blocked the way. In an instant, a huge cloud of smoke and dust slowly rose from the spot, rising to the sky, forming a mushroom-shaped cloud. In an instant, the super-high temperature burned everything around, and no signs of life could be seen. Under the nuclear explosion, all things are equal. And in this radiation haze, a half-kneeling figure loomed. It's 4 o'clock now. The update is complete, and it's time to go to bed. I originally wanted to leave the first show of the nuclear explosion kick to Tang-sen, who had his soul power increased to level 70 under the 7-in-1 fusion skill in the Advanced Soul Master Academy competition, but when I thought that only the title Douluo round could survive after this kick, I could only leave it to this evil soul master who is hated by both humans and gods. If you enjoy reading it, please collect and support it. I won't ask for recommendation votes. I found that if there are too many recommendation votes, I will have to add more. To be honest, I don't want to add more. Please save the recommendation votes for other books. There is no need to give them to me. I find it troublesome. Anyway, the editor doesn't look at the recommendation vote data. Chapter 72. What is nuclear kick? Nuclear smoke and dust cannot be dispersed easily. The nuclear dust produced by the nuclear explosion will stay in place for a long time until it is blown away by the wind and scattered everywhere as time goes by, but now as an exception. The mushroom-shaped clouds floating in the sky seemed to feel some kind of attraction. At a speed visible to the naked eye, they rolled down unbelievably and gradually disappeared bit by bit. After a while, the smoke and dust slowly formed like a vortex. The dust rolled and rotated continuously, and was completely absorbed by a figure in the center area. Except for the shocking, sunken gold and red glazed floor and the extremely large circular shock wave area, there was no more smoke and dust. At this moment, in the center area, the half-kneeling figure gradually became clear in the steaming twisted heat. A young man. Uchiha Uranium's face was pale, he was breathing heavily, his eyes were terrified, and beads of sweat kept oozing from his forehead and slowly dripping to the ground, but before they hit the ground, they were evaporated by the heat without making a sound. The ground around him was slowly rising with hot air that could vaporize a person on the spot. At this moment, the place where Uchiha Uranium was located was more terrifying than hell, and also hotter than hell. The temperature inside exceeded 100,000 degrees. Uchiha Uranium slowly stood up, his body shaking, and the feeling of having his soul power drained out was very uncomfortable. Although now, his third soul skill was still passively operating, fully absorbing all the energy nearby and converting it into soul power to replenish himself, it was of no avail. The next moment, the boy who had just stood up felt his knees soften, and he knelt down again, supporting the ground with one hand. At this moment, the surrounding ground was completely crystalline like burning glass. The originally lush ground was burned by the high temperature of the nuclear explosion in an instant, forming such a dazzling and spectacular scene. At this time, the scalding ground did not bring any heat to the boy, and the clothes he had just traded did not curl at all. The radiation field in the third soul skill at full power, the energy absorption aura completely absorbed all kinds of radiation, high temperature, explosion, dust, shock waves and billions of atmospheric pressure from the center of the nuclear explosion. Even when he touched the ground with his own hands, he did not feel any pain or heat, but a faint coolness. The energy absorption aura can convert energy into soul power, and soul power can continue to maintain the energy absorption aura. If the energy around is endless, Uchiha Uranium can also open the third soul skill forever without any consumption, and it may even be that there is too much energy and the soul power is in excess of demand. This is the soul ring of a soul beast that was once close to 20,000 years old. Although it has been downgraded, it still maintains an extremely strong power at this moment. No matter what soul power soul skill you have, except for melee attacks, as long as you don't kill me on the spot, I can absorb yours in return. Uchiha Uranium's breathing became rapid. He never thought that he only had 2 of the 3 types of Greek letter alpha, Greek letter beta, and Greek letter gamma rays mixed together, plus the soul power of his whole body, but he could actually cause such a terrifying kick. At that moment, he could even feel death. Regardless of other reasons, just one point, the pressure of billions of atmospheres in an instant could completely crush him into something thinner than paper. For a long time, Uchiha Uranium slowly recovered the soul power in his body to half, and then stood up again, looking around at the terrifying surroundings. Around him, at least within a radius of 10 kilometers, all the trees were destroyed by the shock wave. The closer the distance, the lower the integrity. Even within 3 kilometers of him, there were no trees at all of them were colorful crystals. The soil was completely burned through, emitting bright reflections, and the trees were all gasified, leaving no trace. The nuclear explosion kick was so terrifying. Uchiha Uranium was slowly recalling the feeling at that time. He seemed to have returned to the past again. The energy under his feet was condensed. In the eyes of the elemental pupil, no village was left. Under such agitated emotions, all soul power was transmitted to his feet without reservation. When he was about to merge all 3 types of ray energy, he suddenly remembered that there was a village at least dozens of kilometers away from this place. In a hurry, he could only take back the gamma ray energy that had not yet been invested, and kick the evil soul master with a nuclear explosion kick generated by 2 energies. Although this was not his full strength, after all, once the 3 energies of this explosion gathered, I am afraid that at least 50 kilometers would be the range of its shock wave, instead of the current dozen kilometers. You know, under normal nuclear explosion equivalent, the range starts at 100 kilometers, and hydrogen bombs are hundreds of kilometers. Although 2 types of radiation energy were used, in Uchiha Uranium's perception, the most powerful one was probably guided by his own soul power. If radiation energy is likened to the key to the expansion of nuclear explosion damage, for example, adding 1 energy is the normal power, the second energy is 100 times, and the third energy is 10,000 times, then whose soul power is the base number among them. The more soul power is used, the power caused will rise geometrically. That is the current situation. You know, he is only at the level of soul sect, and his soul power is not that strong. In time, if he reaches the level of soul saint or even soul Douluo, I am afraid that his kick will truly reach the realm of a large yield nuclear explosion. Is that so? Controlling the output of soul power is equivalent to controlling the damage of the nuclear explosion kick. In this case, there is no need to worry about all teammates being killed by 1 kick. Otherwise, without soul skills, relying only on physical fitness, I may not be able to beat the golden generation of the Spirit Hall. Uchiha Uranium nodded secretly and sighed. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Only by using it can you know the secret. Fortunately, I have tried it now. Otherwise, if the enemy attacks in the future, I will kill all the innocent people around me with 1 kick. Now that I can control the equivalent, I still need to practice more. Then, Uchiha Uranium took a deep breath, stepped hard, and walked out of the glass hell in front of him. The crystallized ground was very hard and emitted a lot of radiation energy. If an ordinary person came to this area, he would not even consider whether he would be burned to death on the spot. This high concentration of radiation alone is enough to cause a person's genes to collapse within 10 minutes. Unlike Chernobyl, where wild animals can survive for decades, this is still the hot nuclear explosion center. The villages nearby are scattered. Fortunately, Uchiha Uranium did not let this nuclear explosion kick hurt other villages, but he also had to act as soon as possible. The sound caused by the nuclear explosion kick was as terrifying as the collapse of the sky and the earth. If the radiation energy was not absorbed as soon as possible, the villagers who came to explore would probably die. Uchiha Uranium immediately closed his eyes, opened the radiation field, and tried his best to expand the range, absorbing all the radiation energy within the limit. In the distance, the senior soul master stationed in the town of Takrazo suddenly felt a shock in his heart, and an ominous premonition came to his mind. Then he hurriedly walked out. Before he could stand firm, there was a shocking explosion. A moment later, a violent wind pressure suddenly whistled past. Although it was too far from the center and did not carry any radiation energy, this unnatural situation made everyone notice the pressure coming from the east. A moment later, under the horrified gaze of the guarding soul masters, a mushroom cloud that rushed straight into the sky slowly rose, like the power of heaven. There are 2 more chapters. It is too expensive to read books on Kidian. There are no free coins. You have to pay for everything. No wonder you run pirated copies for free. I understand you. I am also very painful to pay for it on Kidian. Hey, my requirements are not high. Just a first order when the book is on the shelves. I don't ask for any other full orders. It's up to you whether to read pirated copies or not. Anyway, my book shouldn't have many words, 1 million to 1.5 million. I'll decide whether to speed up and write the next one depending on the performance. So I'm not too worried about subscriptions. A few is a little, although I still hope to support the genuine version. After all, I might not be able to write if I don't have food to eat. This is the specific reason why most authors stop writing halfway through. No performance, no money, no way to make a living. They might as well go to work. What's the point of writing a book? It's good to get something for free, but it's impossible for an author to generate electricity with love all the time, right? Daily request for votes and collections. Chapter 73, Takrazo Town. What happened? What's going on? Look, what happened just now? The door of the building with a huge dome, which was brown in color, was suddenly pushed open, and a tall figure hurried out. He was swift and anxious, with beads of sweat oozing from his bald head. His eyes were full of questions and horror. He felt the soul power fluctuation just now, which was very terrifying. Although he looked like a wretched fat man, the soul power fluctuations on the mayor's body were fluctuating. Although there were no soul rings, he still had a strong deterrent. For a moment, he actually stunned all the people around him, who were at a loss and their throats were dry. A soul master at the level of soul emperor pointed in a certain direction. There was no doubt that a very terrifying soul power fluctuation had just come from that place. At this moment, the mushroom-shaped clouds towering into the sky had not dissipated. The huge strong wind even carried some gravel, smashing the glass windows into pieces. The power of a nuclear explosion was so powerful that it was astonishing. After all, this is a town near the border of the empire, and it is heavily guarded. The chief of a town must be a soul master with superb cultivation. Even if there is no soul Douluo or title Douluo, it is a soul saint level existence. Otherwise, if the soul power is low, what should be done if he is assassinated one day? At this moment, he has reached the strength of a soul saint at level 76, and he's a well-known figure even in the entire Douluo Continent. Kozak felt a strong sense of uneasiness at this time. The soul power fluctuation just now was too strong, and only the title Douluo crown that he had seen before could be comparable to it. You must know that this is the border of the empire, close to the Lima plain of the Sharingan Empire. The title Douluo Kozak suddenly appeared in this place. The more he thought about it, Douluo is a rare existence in the entire continent, but at this moment he suddenly appeared at the border of the empire and issued a huge fluctuation. Does that mean that 2 beings of the same level are fighting here? Change your thinking. Why are they fighting? Suddenly, Mayor Kazak raised his head abruptly, his face pale, his eyes revealing deep fear. That's right, if it was the Xiandao Empire that attempted to start a war, the Xiandao side's Douluo sneaked in and tried to clean up the border, and at this moment, our Xingluo Empire's Douluo found the traces of the other side and started fighting. That's why there were such deterrent soul power fluctuations and explosions. In other words, Xiandao and Xingluo are going to go to war? And he is the main battle zone here? As his mind was thinking, two big words in the mayor's mind were extremely clear at this time. Run. Taking a deep breath, Kazak wiped the sweat from his forehead, his face was urgent, and his pale face regained its expression. Just now, the idea of escaping flashed through his mind. If he ran away, he would definitely be regarded as a bribe traitor by the Empire, and then what awaited him was not peace. Fortunately, he did not make such a frightened bird-like move, otherwise it would really make people laugh. Which direction did it come from? Investigate immediately, pass down orders, assemble the Soul Master troops, and put the ordinary army into combat readiness. When the investigation news comes back, immediately split the troops into two groups according to the situation. One group notifies the border, and the other group notifies the principality. Report to the principality that there is a tidal Douluo level battle on the border. The Empire's border cannot be lost. The next moment, after Kazak calmed himself down, the decisiveness of the mayor was immediately revealed. This is an important military town responsible for guarding the border. There are very few villagers, and there are only nearby villages. At Kazak's order, the entire town's machinery started immediately. On the one hand, he was worried about the investigators, so he asked Locke, a Soul Emperor-level strong man, to follow him. On the other hand, he also began to give orders to the heads around him and began to act in an orderly manner. Soon, on the way, the group suddenly found that a mushroom-shaped cloud had disappeared at this moment, but this did not make them pay attention. It was normal for clouds to dissipate, but the increasingly strong soul power fluctuations in front of them made them feel a little uneasy. Half an hour later, whoosh! A figure suddenly braked and stood there, staring at the forest in front of him, which was like a tornado destroying a parking lot. All the big trees collapsed and broke, and there was no green. The leaves were dried up, evaporating all the body fluids, leaving only dry, gray branches and leaves that broke at the touch. Then, several figures flashed and arrived here. Like the first Soul Emperor, the Soul Masters behind were even more unbearable. There were waves of gasps, and the heat hitting their faces, with amazing deterrence, preventing anyone from moving forward. In front of them, under their feet, was a scene swept by an extremely terrifying shockwave. You know, even nearly 50 kilometers away, you can feel the extremely strong wind pressure, not to mention these places closest to the nuclear explosion. Although the closest ones have been vaporized into crystals, and there is no trace of any plants or animals at all, at the moment, these trees baptized by the shock wave and high heat deeply shocked these Soul Masters who did not know the meaning of nuclear peace. Even Locke, who was a Soul Emperor, couldn't help swallowing his saliva at this time. Such a huge power was not caused by ordinary soul skills. No, soul skills could not destroy everything within a 10-kilometer range. Locke's dark face was slightly pale at this time. Just standing there, he could see the high temperature coming from deeper. As he went deeper, the traces of cracked and dry land became more obvious, as if 10,000 rutting bull soul beasts were fighting madly here to compete for a female. The land and trees were all horrible. The sound of steam coming from the ground kept coming. As the 5 people went deeper, the heat around them became higher and higher, until they activated their martial souls and used soul power to offset the heat around them. That was enough to burn ordinary people to death. After a while, the Soul Master with the lowest soul power level couldn't bear it anymore. The intense soul power consumption and the surrounding temperature were more terrifying than hell, so he left the team first. At Locke's signal, the other Soul Masters breathed a sigh of relief and quickly retreated. Only Locke was left to move forward alone. Soon, Locke came to 3 kilometers away from the center of the nuclear explosion and could no longer move forward. The temperature around him was so high that the light was distorted. Even when his soul power was fully activated to protect himself, Locke could still feel that his feet were so hot that he could hardly stand. But now he didn't feel anything at all, but stared blankly at the front. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. So beautiful the dreamlike golden red glazed ground in front of him was like a transparent, refracting a completely different, completely diverse, Colorful spectrum with the distortion of light, gold, red, purple, blue, green, orange and yellow. Even with a continuous flashing of these lights, Locke unconsciously took a step forward, wanting to reach out and touch these unreal creations of the gods. But the stinging and burning feet woke him up, and then his face changed drastically, and he stepped back suddenly with a look of horror. Then, without hesitation, he turned around and retreated. He wanted to tell the mayor about these dreamlike scenes and pass on the news. With his Soul Emperor strength, he couldn't even enter the middle area. Obviously, this was definitely not something he could face. He had to report it. This was the border. If it was an ordinary area, he wouldn't even care, but this was the border. Once this was a signal of war with the Dou Empire, then his news would inevitably affect everything. Locke didn't know that if the instigator hadn't absorbed all the radiation, he would have died of radiation-induced DNA collapse and skin ulceration before he got here. And he didn't expect that at this moment, the owner of the nuclear explosion was running in another direction. That direction was Longsing City. That was the residence of the Yu clan of the Xingluo Empire. Collection recommendation: everyone is excited. By the way, the shock wave of a nuclear explosion spreads at a speed of several kilometers per second within the distance from the center, and decreases with the increase of distance, so the shock wave range of more than 50 kilometers is reasonable. Even a medium-yield hydrogen bomb has a range of more than 400 kilometers. Mine is relatively small. After all, it is a pseudo-nuclear explosion. A real nuclear explosion would be too powerful. I guess the Soul Saint level will be able to unlock it in the future. Chapter 74, Longsing City. Longsing City is located in the north of the Xingluo Empire, less than 200 kilometers away from the border between the two empires. Compared with the military town of Takrazo, it is more like a border city, connecting the communication and exchanges between Xingluo and Dou. Countless merchants and soul masters trade and exchange here, and the flow of people is so large that it even exceeds the capitals of the two countries. Longsing City itself is not directly under the jurisdiction of the Xingluo Empire's royal family, but a subordinate principality, the Principality of Malzahar. Because of trade, this small city is extremely prosperous, and there is an endless stream of merchants passing by. Kingdoms and principalities, these forces that are ostensibly affiliated with the two empires, have actually long been out of the control of the empire, but Longsing City is an exception. For this kind of border city, it has always been the top priority in the minds of the royal family. There is no need to consider that no matter how much the cost, the gate of the empire must be controlled in their hands, but the Spirit Hall has been secretly interfering. Behind the seemingly prosperous Longsing City, there is a turbulent undercurrent that is constantly surging. Besides Longsing City, other cities were even worse. With the secret support of the Spirit Hall, although they did not openly confront the empire, there were already some signs of friction and conflict in secret. Perhaps when these signs gradually burned to the point of destroying the empire, the Spirit Hall would slowly surface and reveal its true purpose. Soon, after a simple interrogation, a young man with a neat face and shining silver hair entered Longsing City. Of course, the gate tax for outsiders entering the city was indispensable, calculated per head, 1 gold soul coin per person. The young man did not have any money in his hand. To be honest, it was a bit shameful. Although he was a soul master, it was obvious that soul masters also had to pay money to enter. What should he do? But Uchiha Uranium did not get anxious about this. In the forest before, he could already feel that as his mental power increased, he could also gradually feel the pupil power in the radiation eyes. He could use this pupil power, such as the mental shock of looking at each other. This was also the reason why he looked at a bird soul beast in the soul beast group fight before fighting with a radiation titan giant ape, and then it suddenly softened. When he reached the realm of 3 Megadama, he also awakened the ability of illusion. At present, he can simply and effectively control any creature, and the other party cannot detect it. Unless the other party is suddenly awakened by external force, he will not know that he has been controlled by illusion. Although there is no systematic training, and there is no practice on how to control pupil power, Uchiha's natural illusion is completely equivalent to a novice tutorial. A junior player like Uchiha Uranium can control 2 ordinary gatekeepers at the same time, pretending to pay money, but actually passing by. After he had walked a few steps and the people waiting behind him had caught up, the illusion was lifted. The 2 city guards did not realize that they had not handled any gold soul coins, nor did they have any doubts. After all, there was such a large flow of people, and they could not tell when this person entered the city at a glance. These eyes are quite useful. Uchiha Uranium smiled, but he did not unfold his martial soul. Instead, he followed his thoughts and his eyes instantly turned into the shape of radiant eyes. You know, this is a martial soul. The appearance of the martial soul was not accompanied by the appearance of the spirit ring. It was simply incredible and completely subverted the understanding of the martial soul in Douluo Continent. But Uchiha Uranium knew that the martial soul of the Sharingan was the ancestors' travel through time and was assimilated by the rules, but the assimilation was not complete. After all, the physical body traveled through time, and the Sharingan could solidify into the martial soul law. This was already considered to be a great respect for the Sharingan, so the tragedy of the family happened. Although it is a martial spirit, it is not a martial spirit. It looks like a martial spirit, but there are two modes. One is that the spirit ring appears and the martial spirit appears, and the other is that the martial spirit is simply revealed, while the spirit ring is still hidden. As a variation of the Sharingan, the radiation eye obviously has everything that the Sharingan has, and the radiation eye has things that the Sharingan does not have, as if it is an enhanced version. Except for the uncontrolled radiation field at the beginning, Uchiha Uranium is superior to ordinary Uchiha clan members in all aspects. In fact, Uchiha Uranium also hopes that the Sharingan can completely become the martial spirit format of Douluo Continent, rather than this special situation, which is neither up nor down, and extremely embarrassing. After all, I can't go back to the Naruto world. I have survived in Douluo for 1,000 years. Who knows whether the Naruto place is now 1,000 years later than Boruto, and it is completely in the situation of ascending to the universe, or it is still the Warring States period, and even Hashirame's ancestors have not been born yet. Uchiha Uranium has only one hope at present, that is, to completely change the blood of the family in his lifetime, to completely integrate the martial spirit into the blood, and never become a useless person once the eyes are taken away. He wants to make the name of Uchiha resound throughout the continent, instead of shrinking in one place and lingering on like now. Or, can becoming a god do this? Can becoming a god interfere with the inheritance of the family? Unconsciously, Uchiha Uranium was stunned, standing in the middle of the road, thinking about the way forward for the Uchiha family. I don't know when it started, maybe it was because of the opening of the radiation field, or maybe he had this talent since he was a child. He has been able to think about the way forward and the direction of progress from the perspective of everyone else. That is above the family, just like Uchiha Itachi. That is, the thinking of the shadow. Hey! Get out of the way. Don't block the way. Suddenly, an irritable voice came into Uchiha Uranium's ears, and he couldn't help but wake up the boy who was analyzing the current situation and how to deal with the family. Then, a hot breath hit the back of Uchiha Uranium's neck, carrying a smell of horse and horse saliva. Uchiha Uranium turned his head quickly and looked at the tall horse in front of him, pulling batches of goods, and scolding the coachman of the caravan. It seemed that seeing Uchiha Uranium still standing there without making any move, the rough coachman raised his dark eyebrows and was ready to use the whip in his hand, as if he was going to pull it out at the next moment. Suddenly, the curtain behind the coachman was lifted, and a short and medium-sized man with a full figure, a kind smile, and a housekeeper-like appearance came out and pressed the coachman's hand holding the whip. Then, with a smile on his face, he took out a package like a brocade bag from his arms. Although it didn't look very bulging, it was quite heavy. Then the man got off the carriage and handed the brocade bag to Uchiha Uranium, who was about to evade, with both hands. His eyes narrowed and his smile rose slightly. Although his face didn't show anything, he could feel a sense of sincerity and apology in his temperament. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I used rough tactics and frightened you. I apologize as a token of my appreciation. Please accept it. As soon as he finished speaking, he placed the brocade bag in front of Uchiha Uranium, as if he would not leave unless the boy took it. Uchiha Uranium was slightly startled, wondering if he had been seen using the 3 Magatama illusion to control the city guards to enter the city. But when he looked at the crowds of people gathered around him because of the carriage gem, he felt a little tingling. He hadn't seen many people in 7 or 8 years, and so many people around him made Uchiha Uranium feel uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Yes. Uchiha Uranium nodded slightly, took the brocade bag, and then made way to indicate that the road was passable. Huh? The butler secretly breathed a sigh of relief, then nodded apologetically, and got on the carriage, signaling the team to continue moving forward, leaving only Uchiha Uranium to look at the brocade bag, not knowing what happened, and someone actually gave him money halfway. Indistinctly, he seemed to hear the butler's rebuke just now. Idiot. I have taught you so many times that peace is the most important thing. Peace is the most important thing. A person walking alone on the road is obviously a soul master. Did you want to whip him just now? If I hadn't handled it properly and came out in time, I'm afraid both of you and I would have been killed. Idiot. Watch the road. Just stop when you encounter something. Soon, as the sound of the team faded away, Longsing City became normal again, and Uchiha Uranium on the spot couldn't help but laugh, and then his face became calm again. So this is the way ordinary people survive? No matter what you encounter, you apologize first to avoid being killed on the spot. Augie update is over. I'm going to sleep. Let me see if there's anyone who hasn't voted for me yet. Huh? It's you. Hey, hand over the tickets. Chapter 75, Beautiful Figures on the Motorcade. Uranium was strolling in Longsing City at the moment. The bustling Longsing City was completely different from the wild Tsingtao Great Forest. The people coming and going, the shouting, and the various people almost dazzled Uranium. That's right, after entering Longsing City, Uchiha Uranium decided to use a pseudonym, temporarily removing the 3 surnames of Uchiha that were very easy to expose, and just using the single name of Uranium. Even in the golden generation of Wuhan Hall, Yan had the same name, so couldn't he use it? He didn't want to change to some other names, he didn't have a sense of substitution at all. He had used the name of Uchiha Uranium for more than 10 years, how could it be so easy to adapt to it if he changed to something else? It would be better to just use the single name of Uranium, which was simple and clear, and it would be easier for the family to confirm his true identity when he became famous in the future. To be honest, Uranium didn't want to stay here any longer. It was too noisy. He had felt a little fresh when he first entered the city. He wanted to find a place to sleep and have a good meal. But at this moment, there were endless figures flashing by. The hawking sounds around him had never been heard from the morning to the afternoon. Moreover, as the afternoon went on, the flow of people became more dense, which was more annoying than the cicadas in summer. He liked quiet places like the forest. As soon as he entered the city, he saw a grocery store selling simple maps of the city. The price was not expensive because they were only used in the city and could only be sold to outsiders. Even if they were outsiders, they could get familiar with most places as long as they walked around the city a few times. It must be said that the middle-aged man who looked like a butler just now was quite generous. He put a full 10 gold soul coins quietly inside. The bright gold soul coins reflected a faint golden light under the light, which looked quite magnificent. It didn't look like a trading item at all, but like a work of art, which was lovable. The map was not expensive, only 5 silver soul coins. Although the purchasing power of silver soul coins is already very high, 1 gold soul coin is even enough for an ordinary family to eat and drink for a month. But what kind of place is this? In the border city of the 2 empires, the entry tax alone requires 1 gold soul coin per person. In a place where every inch of land is worth money, is it expensive to buy a map for 5 silver soul coins? That store is a grocery store, and most of the products sold are quite sophisticated and look of excellent quality. Among them, Uranium also bought many items for his own use, including exquisite cloaks, sleeping bags, water bags, backpacks, and white bases, black corrugated masks, revealing 2 holes dug out, just like the one used by Uchiha Obito in the final battle, which is quite similar. After buying, there are still 5 gold soul coins left to buy food and drink utensils. He is ready. He will wait at the exit of Longsing City to see if there are any convoys carrying goods to sell to the Shandao Empire, and then provide them with shelter with his identity as a soul master, and they will give back to him, such as free rides. Otherwise, just relying on the vast Lima plain, if there is no direction to show him the way, he may be completely lost in it, which is a headache to think about. A moment later, a shout came from the city. Recruiting guards. Recruiting guards. Going to the capital of the Shandao Empire, Shandao City, we urgently need 5 great soul masters. The deposit is 50 gold soul coins, and there will be another 100 gold soul coins when we arrive. Soul masters are negotiated separately, and we will set off after we are recruited. Uranium took a closer look, his eyes passed through the bustling crowd, and his sight was cast at the source of the shouting. It was a tall and thin middle-aged man with a sunken face and dark yellow skin. Except for the gorgeous clothes on his body and the blazing light in his eyes, he did not have the style of a rich family. But to be honest, when you go out to do business, how can the boss personally go to the battle? Should I go to Sharingan City? It should be time for Xiao and Tang San to arrive at Shrek now, right? Should I participate in it and become a god for free? Uranium frowned, and suddenly the family heritage flashed in his mind, and his face darkened again. Forget it, I won't care about it if I become a god. I won't feel at ease until the family problem is solved. Moreover, I can't interfere with the lower world if I become a god. Once I become a god, and I can't make some changes for the family, then as the third mutant martial spirit holder in 1,000 years who is highly expected by the family, wouldn't I have accomplished nothing? Family is the most important. I can't go to Shrek, and I don't need the ties between friends. Moreover, Shrek, led by Tang San, is an enemy of the Spirit Hall, which may hinder my actions. I want to go to Sharingan Royal Academy. After making the decision, Uchiha Uranium raised his eyelids, made up his mind, and slowly walked towards the caravan that was still shouting, ready to go to Sharingan City. Become a god? What a great temptation, endless life, immortality, for an ordinary person. If killing relatives can make you a god, then I'm afraid they will not hesitate to do it. But for Uranium, the family's inheritance is more important than anything else. The family is huddled in one place. If no one saves it, I'm afraid that when the two gods of the Spirit Hall are in place in the future, I'm afraid that only destruction will be waiting for the family. He wants to become stronger, stronger than the two gods of the Spirit Hall. In the eyes of the strong, there is no place for the weak. In Uranium's eyes, a fire was gradually burning. Uranium stood around and was just about to ask the housekeeper what price he should pay for a soul-sect strong man like him. But before he could say anything, a beautiful figure came forward and opened her red lips. "Excuse me, are you passing by Soto City?" Her voice was very cold, without a trace of emotion. Her long black hair was scattered on her shoulders, her face was slightly lowered, and her skin was fair, giving people a different feeling. The expression on the girl's face was very cold, a kind of coldness from the heart. In contrast to her cold face, her figure was quite hot, with bumps and curves, and her limbs were well proportioned and slender. Her hands naturally drooped on both sides of her body. The kind of dead silence and coldness released from her body made the team housekeepers stunned for a while. "Lou, passing by." "Yes, passing by. Would you like to participate in the guard duty?" The middle-aged housekeeper had a very accurate eye, and he also knew himself. Such a pure girl must not be a child of an ordinary family, otherwise she would not have such a temperament. After all, he has traveled all over the country and has seen a lot. He knows very well that such an iceberg beauty must be arrogant, and may even be unreasonable, so he did not use words that seem a bit low, such as conscription, responsibility, etc., but used participation. The meaning is obvious, this young lady may be here to play. "Yes, I am a great soul master." The cold girl nodded slightly, and then released her martial soul to show that what she said was true. Because she did not carry out martial soul possession, but simply summoned the martial soul, the next moment, 2 circles of yellow soul rings slowly floated from bottom to top under the feet of the cold girl, and in an instant, the surroundings were startled and discussed. The latest novel is first published on the 69th Book Forum. It's the best spirit ring configuration. My god. This girl is so young. She's actually a great spirit master. She's so beautiful, and she's so talented. These are 200-year spirit rings. There were so many discussions, and for a moment, the people around seemed to be in an uproar, and their eyes were all focused on the cold girl. There was heat, shock, envy, and more, only amazement. Such a beautiful girl, with such high talent, a great spirit master of this age is simply unheard of. The girl on the side frowned slightly after feeling the gazes of everyone around her, and then put away her martial spirit, as if she didn't care. Under the guidance of the caravan steward, she slowly walked to a carriage of the caravan, boarded it, walked in, and blocked all sights. At this moment, Uranium was a little entangled, wondering whether he should stand out and open his own spirit ring. To be honest, he was afraid that these spirit rings that surpassed the ordinary and broke the conventional age would scare everyone, and if some spies were attracted and reported to the Spirit Hall, and then robbed and killed them halfway, it would be embarrassing. Unless he did not open the spirit. He had the illusion of 3 Magatama. Thinking of this, Uranium's eyes lit up. The editor told me that I updated too fast some time ago, 3, 4, and 5 times a day. Let me slow down and update twice a day, otherwise it will be very troublesome after the new book period. However, in view of everyone's enthusiasm, I declare that all the additional updates due to the additional update rules will not disappear, and will be kept until the day of listing. I said that there will be at least 10 updates on the day of listing, so that everyone can enjoy it at one time, and then there will be other additional updates. So, whether you can see me update 20 or 30 chapters a day depends on everyone's active participation. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.